Exeter TV is the town's public and government access. Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Okay, with the hour being 6:30 PM, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Town of Exeter Select Board meeting of Monday, February 12th, 2024. I will introduce the board when we come back, but our first order of business is hopefully going into non-public under RSA 91A, 32A, and L.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Chartrand.
Aye.
Selectman Blanchard.
Aye.
Selectwoman Blanchard. Clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0, and we should be back by 7 o'clock.
I'm going to leave my purse there, but I don't want to leave.
Hey, Ross.
This is your meeting minute for the December 13th Exeter Downtown Parking Open House. Exeter citizens gathered at the Town Hall to hear results from the downtown parking, traffic, and pedestrian flow analysis that was conducted by the engineering consulting company, Stantec. Consultants working on the project started off the public meeting by giving an overview of the project and its findings.
This is public meeting number 2 for this project. We had a public workshop now back in early October. That public workshop was to share results from a parking study we had been conducting throughout the town in September. We did it on weekdays, weekends, just to monitor overall utilization of the parking through downtown. That's kind of the first phase of this project. We then were seeing if it's the appropriate inventory, and then we also shared some of the results of the survey that was released about how people move through and park into downtown.
Next, they jumped into several draft recommendations for how the town could address issues and improve conditions in the study area. The recommendations included opening restricted private parking lots for public use, introducing parking ambassadors to work downtown, and even bringing back paid parking.
I know that there was just a video released by the Exeter Historic Society talking about the history of paid parking in Exeter, which I just thought was so timely. There used to be paid parking on Water Street, and it paid for itself basically. But then as people started driving out to the malls more and the meters became into disrepair, it wasn't cost effective, so they were removed. Well, after doing our utilization analysis, we believe that bringing back meters may actually be a good way to not only generate a little funds, but also to help with that sort of wall of cars that we see on Water Street right now, to allow there to be more turnover, which is just great for businesses.
Another unique idea involved reconfiguring the bandstand intersection. The draft recommendations envisioned a green space between the town hall and the bandstand with the intent of improving sightlines, pedestrian safety, and traffic flow.
By doing an all-way stop like this, we're able to cut the intersection down in size. There's a lot of pavement out there to work with, which you can't really feel based on how hectic everyone feels as they're driving through the downtown. So if you're able to tighten up that intersection, well, what can you do with that extra space? We were able to mark up pretty effectively a general concept of the town of Exeter taking back their downtown. I mean, giving some sort of town center green space. Parking is a major issue, right? And we've talked about it, but there's some additional capacity within 3 minutes of the downtown that we expect could absorb this.
The consultants also discussed other draft recommendations, including establishing a new truck route, adjusting zoning, and revising the winter parking ban. If you're interested in learning more, you can watch the full meeting on our Exeter TV YouTube page. Welcome to your meeting minute for the Exeter Select Board's January 29th meeting. A heartfelt thank you was given to Lou Hitzrow after his resignation from the Energy Committee.
His resignation letter's in the packet, but for all of the kind words that he had for all of the different people he worked with, from the Select Board to the Energy Committee, Kristen Murphy, I think it's reciprocal, and the pleasure was with us working with Lou and with Renee. So we wish him well and thank him for his service.
The idea of a new subcommittee was brought up by Town Manager Russ Dean.
This committee actually would be charged with reviewing the town's exemption and credit programs, the core element being to maintain fairness within the system. And this was actually something that the master plan recommended be addressed in parts 5A and 5B of the grow section of the master plan. So the proposal is to create a committee. This would be a 5-member committee to include 1 select board member, and this committee would review the town's current exemptions and credits.
I spoke with Lindsay Sonnet, the chair of the Housing Advisory Committee, to get her take on this. So a few things were thrown out. One, depending what this board wants to consider, that it would come back to the Housing Advisory Committee because it is part of their charge before it comes to the select board so that they can weigh in.
To have a separate committee like this take a look at our exemption programs is a wonderful idea. And the reason for that is anytime we give a particular group of property owners an exemption, all the other citizens in this town pick up the slack and pay for that exemption. So looking at it holistically is a wonderful idea.
Selectwoman and State Representative Julie Gilman gave a report on a bill she is sponsoring in the State House that concerns virtual meetings.
And it's Senate Bill 533, and it has to do with quorums of committees present, or physical presence of a quorum of a committee, commission, etc. What this allows for, all but 2 people from the board need to be in the place noticed for the physical location. One of my observations was that we had more people watching us via Zoom, the select board meetings actively, than we have. Right now we have 0.
I want to thank you, Julie, for your work on this. Thanks, Senator Altschuler as well, and the other sponsors. To move towards hybrid models of meeting will allow more of our citizens to participate as volunteers. It'll increase the vibrancy of our town government, and we should absolutely be in support of this bill.
The meeting finished up with committee reports. To watch the full meeting, visit our Exeter TV YouTube page. The next Select Board meeting is slated for February 12th. See you there.
Okay, welcome back. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Exeter. Good evening to my colleagues on the board, respective town staff, those in attendance, and certainly those watching from home. Welcome to the Town of Exeter Select Board meeting of February 12, 2024. I'd like to start by introducing the board. To my right, Selectman Dan Chartrand. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Our Vice Chair, Selectwoman Molly Cowan. Good evening.
Hi, everyone.
And to my left, our Clerk, Selectwoman Julie Gilman. Good evening.
Good evening.
Selectwoman Nancy Belanger. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
And all the way to the left, our Town Manager, Mr. Rustine. Good evening.
Good evening.
Our Recording Secretary, Joanna Bartel. Good evening. Good evening. And my name is Nico Papakostandis. The board was in non-public for approximately a half hour. We're ready to start our regular business meeting. And to start with, we have a memo in our packet from our Water and Sewer Manager, Stephen Dalton, regarding the award of the septage receiving equipment. I'll first ask the board if there are any questions on the memo. It's pretty straightforward. Mr. Dean, do you have anything to speak to?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward myself.
Okay, then with that, and no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to award the septage receiving upgrade project bid to Clara Environmental Technologies and Equipment in the amount of $288,200, and to authorize the town manager or his designee to sign all corresponding contracts and agreements.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Now open up to the audience for public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to comment, please step up to the mic. If your comments are relative to an agenda item, we'd ask that you wait till that agenda item comes up. But if not, please state your name and address for the record. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Robert Spann. I'm not a resident of Exeter, so I think I have to have permission to speak. I live in Brentwood.
You do. Thank you. Any objection? Seeing none, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm really here just to ask for a update on the Pickpocket Dam study meeting, which has been scheduled for February 27.
Correct.
I don't know if that's still on. I haven't seen any
Indeed
official
it is.
notices yet. Okay.
Yes, it is.
And I would like to ask, if it's appropriate, what the format will be. Will there be time and opportunity for questions from the public? How will it work?
My understanding, it will be a public hearing so that members of the public will be able to ask questions, make comment. Mr. Dean, do we have a time and location?
So the time is, I believe it's 7 o'clock, subject to confirmation, and it is at the Exeter Town Hall. And we are having RPC serve as moderators for the meeting.
Great.
Rockingham Planning Commission.
And that is posted on our website?
I will double check to see if it's posted on the website. I believe
so
it is.
Let's do that, and then if you could correspond with our colleagues in Brentwood, and just let them know.
Yeah, and I have done that with Karen Clement already, the town administrator there.
Okay.
I've sent her notice about the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comment from the public? I will pause for a moment to see if there's anybody on Zoom. Seeing none, we'll move on. We do not have any proclamations or recognitions this evening. So I would ask the board to address the regular meeting minutes of January 29th, 2024.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Page 4, first line. Mr. Beeson said the acquisition of Planet Playground. Could we add the word land in there to say with the land acquisition?
I think that's a good catch.
Thank you.
Did you get that, Joanna? Okay, thank you. Any other revisions or amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the Town of Exeter. Oops, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Page 6, deliberative session. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. It says Mr. Chartrand will take Article 5. We should add that I had Article 6.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Selectwoman Belanger, Article 6. You got that, Joanna? Perfect. Any other amendments or revisions?
No.
Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the Town of Exeter Select Board regular meeting minutes of January 29th, 2024 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We don't have any appointments or resignations this evening, so we can jump right into our discussion items. We have two really fantastic presentations this evening, and I know we want to jump right in. First is we have Mr. Bill Keegan of Bill Keegan Associates, who's here to give a presentation. Just to give a little background, earlier in the year in 2023 rather, during the board's goal-setting session, one of the goals that we wanted to address was looking at succession planning and a review of the organization as a whole. Shortly thereafter, we interviewed and retained Mr. Keegan, who started his review of the organization in late June. He's worked quite thoroughly and deliberatively interviewing not only all town staff, but select board members and I believe union leaders as well. So he did produce a comprehensive report that the select board has had an opportunity to review over the past couple of weeks. And I'm happy to say that this report will be posted on the town website shortly, hopefully within the week. So everybody, the public will be able to review this. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bill Keegan. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. So it's nice to see you all. I just want to start out by saying it's been a pleasure working here in Exeter. I was just talking earlier tonight that, not every place you go to is going to be always pleasant, but this has been really a true pleasure for me to work here. And the organization you have is a great organization. You do things really, really well, but the question is, why would you want to have a guy like me come in here and say, okay, what do you have to do to make it better? And I think about it from the movie Top Gun, right, where they bring the best pilots in and they bring them into the room and they say, you guys are all the best of the best. We'll make you better. All right, and so that's just the goal of this process, was to make the organization better based on things that you wouldn't normally recognize and see because you're on the inside. So what I was tasked to do was to come in with an outside perspective, look at things a little bit differently, and see how we can make the organization a little bit better. So with that, I'll get into the goals of the project. First was to evaluate the existing management practices and structure of the organization to see what actually worked well and what kind of things needed to be improved. When you look at an organization, it seems like it's pretty functional as it works because you've always seen it operate a certain way for most of the time you've seen it. I've worked in other organizations that have been structured differently, and I think a little bit more efficiently. And so my goal was to look at this and say, okay, what works well? What are things we can take and have a different perspective on? Then to take a look at individual departments, identify some of the opportunities for improvement and operational efficiency to see how we can change those things around to make sure that we're doing things that make the better sense of in terms of efficiency and collaboration. Every organization can collaborate more, and every organization can communicate more by virtue of the structure that they currently have, or have a better one in the process. Then was to analyze the practices of the Select Board and the Town Manager's Office for opportunities to improve efficiency and collaboration from that office perspective, because let's face it, the Town Manager's Office, and I know my colleague will agree with this, is that a lot gets put on the shoulders of the Town Manager to handle on a day-to-day basis. And here you actually have 15 or 16 or so departments reporting directly to the Town Manager, and that under any circumstance is going to be difficult to manage by virtue of the pure numbers of people that are reporting directly. So we're going to take a look into how we can maybe make that a little bit better. And then the last was to identify and solidify succession leadership plans for town departments. And this is probably one of the most critical things that I think cities and towns have missed over the past several years, particularly as this became really a focal point following COVID, and how a lot of communities felt exposed because people in organizations more or less felt as though, we're not going to stay here forever. We're going to move on. Some people I'm going to move on. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to move on. And then we found out that we had organizations that had real gaps in them because didn't have the ability to continue on with their normal functions. So what we took the look at to see here, and there are some exposures here, there's no question about that, but I think we can actually work with those, and I think some of them have been addressed recently and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm glad to see that steps have been taken. I think, and some of the things that we've talked about during the process here have actually already been implemented to a degree, which I'm really glad to hear as well. I was talking to Russ earlier before the meeting started, and he said he's already taken some steps towards helping to improve his collaboration and communication efforts in the organization. So really glad to see that happening. So this is a look at the current organizational chart, and you can see it's pretty much a linear organization. And by that I mean that if you have the top tier, you have the residents that elect the select board, and the select board appoint the town manager, and then he basically has everybody reporting to him. And this is actually more common than it is uncommon in terms of organizational structures, particularly in government and local government. But I found that in the places that I've worked in where we had a similar type of structure, that it just wasn't very efficient. And in fact, more often than not, things become confused. Information doesn't get circulated as well as it could. And more often than not, there are just way too many people reporting to one person. And so this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And you have some really important and some really good people that work here. But unfortunately, a lot of times things get confused and distorted because there's too many people reporting into one narrow area and sorted out between the assistant town manager and the town manager. So what we did as a first step was to interview the key department heads, key personnel, and town officials. I wanted to get a flavor and understanding of how the organization currently operates. So we met with the representatives of each of the operating departments, and then the purpose of the meetings was to identify how their departments currently operate and understand the working relationships with each of the departments and the administration and the select board. And the reason why that's so important is because if there isn't a well-formed relationship, things get missed in the process. And so I found in the work that I've done in other organizations is that developing a relationship and communication on a regular basis is something that is so critical to getting things done more efficiently. I found this that some of the stuff is just really obvious by simple means of let's meet once a week for an hour, all right? That hour is the most important 60 minutes you could actually have, not only for the manager, but for the organization itself and the department heads. Because more often than not, department heads are so busy, they don't have the time to really focus their attention on the key critical and strategic thinking that should go on in an organization. So this was really, I found to be a really critical piece that was missing that needed to be reinserted into the organization here. The meetings also helped to reveal what worked well and things that could be improved. So there are a lot of things that work well here because you clearly have a great community and the community itself really supports the work that you're all doing collectively. I think that the board and the administration and the department heads do a terrific job of taking care of things on a daily basis. But what I was hoping to do, and ultimately I think the board was trying to do, was to think more strategically and long term. What do we take care of things what we do well today, but what happens if tomorrow we don't have the same capacity to do that? So departments were very forthcoming about their organizational needs, and I thought that was great. They were very open about what they thought they needed. They felt that they were listened to, they were heard by the board and by the administration, but sometimes there just isn't an ability to address all those needs at once. So the way that I looked at this was let's sort those things out and put them into a structure that perhaps could be done a little bit more effectively for them to get their needs met. The range of responses were widespread. Some departments felt that their organizations were operating well, and others identified some important gaps that needed to be met. And some of those gaps were just couldn't be helped. I mean, because you have for instance, some departments that just have one or two people operating them, and if something happens, somebody gets sick, you're in a bit of a bind because you have nobody to address those things on a regular basis that's supposed to be needed, and things won't get done, or they'll fall on the shoulders of somebody who's already burdened by the organization itself and the things that they need to do on a regular basis. So some of the more notable issues that came out of this were filling vacant positions. Some positions were some positions, most notably in public works, were empty for a number of months and even almost over a year. And the absences were taking a toll on the existing employees who are keeping the operations functioning. What's happening in Exeter is happening all over the country right now. It's not unique to Exeter. what's happened is the public works folks, and I know the engineers in the room will attest to this, that they're taking up all the good people. They're going to the engineering firms. So don't take that personal, but that's just the fact, the reality of life right now. And the reason that happened was for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that a lot of federal money started pouring out of Washington and into cities and towns, and as a result, they needed more. The engineering firms felt they had a lot of work to get done, and just they didn't have enough people to do it. So what they do, they were extracting some of these really talented folks from local cities and towns to do that work. And guess what happens? There's no bench to fill the vacancies in the cities and towns. So my theory, and I think it's already starting to come true, is that there's only so much federal money that's going to go around, and then ultimately once that dries up, we're back to the same rotation that we had before. Some of those folks that were working in the engineering firms may end up going back into the cities and towns to finish their careers and to do other things. The second thing is the inability to retain good talent. So right now, there is a genuine talent, very limited talent pool, which means that there are only so many people coming out of colleges and universities, and even out of secondary school or post-secondary schools that are just not taking an interest in local government. And the reason that is because they're seeing so much more money in other industries, the finance world and in private industry, that it's turning into a very competitive world, to the point where it's being very difficult for cities and towns to actually capture good talent. It's also a factor of the next generation of the workforce. The next generation of workforce, they're handcuffed by the fact that they're going to major colleges and universities with $80,000 to $90,000 a year tuition bills, and then when they get out of school, they're realizing, listen, I can't survive on a $60,000, $70,000 a year salary. I have to pay those tuition bills back at some point, unless they get a scholarship or they got some big assistance from their parents. The reality is that they're stuck with some pretty big bills and they have to pay for them. So it's creating a real talent gap in this environment. And then the third is the lack of ability to grow talent from within an organization. A lot of organizations have never really taken the step back and say, look, what can we do to develop the people that we currently have? And develop that group so they can be the next generation of leaders. One of the things that I've really focused my work on over the past 20, 30 years is developing the next generation of leadership. And the reason I saw that is an important issue is because leaders aren't just born. They have to be developed over time. And I think we need to take the time to spend and invest in training programs that develop your existing organizations and build them to become the next leaders for cities and towns particularly. And what happens more often than not, and this happens in just about every city and town that I know of, is that what gets cut first when tough times start to occur, your training budgets go away. And it's actually, in my opinion, it's one of the worst things you could do, because you're really cutting yourself off for the future when you start cutting those kind of programs out. It's because actually that's the next generation that you're focusing on. All right, so here's the existing organization. You have the select board, town manager, form of government. The select board serves as the chief executive and policymaking board. The town manager serves as the chief administrative officer of the town. And there are currently 15 operating departments, all reporting directly or indirectly to the town manager. This includes administration of welfare, which operates out of the town manager's office, which is problematic to me as I see that. I think that's something we really need to focus on. And there's another phase 2 of this contract that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. This high number of high direct reports to one individual simply makes it inefficient for an organization to design that is difficult for any one person to manage under any circumstance. So this is the existing organization on the left. You've got 15 different departments. And in the existing organization, you can see that there's a lot of different people reporting to one person. The number of direct reports creates a situation where you can easily lose focus on the strategic initiatives that really need to be worked on with the Board of Selectmen and with the community itself. So you can focus on things that are for the things that are really, really important for tomorrow's thinking, not just today's. Number of staff in the town manager's office is inefficiently low and offers virtually no backup when there is absence in the office. So you have one administrative secretary, and if she's sick, if she's out, everything falls to the assistant town manager or to the town manager, which you didn't pay him or you didn't pay the assistant town manager to do that kind of work. I mean, you need to have some administrative support, so that really needs to be addressed. Communication throughout the organization could be improved. This is not a shot at the organization itself. It's what it is. It's a reality of the organizational structure. So what's happened is that by having if you have fewer direct reports within a more consolidated leadership team, the outcome should be correspondingly improved overnight. So this is the proposed organization. The voters of Exeter would of course still stay the same. The select board stays the same. The town clerk, of course, is elected by the voters. The town manager is appointed by the board of selectmen. And what I've proposed is that the assistant town manager becomes also an operations director per se. So in other words, this person, if there's operational issues that go on throughout the organization on a daily basis, every one of the department heads could report back to the assistant town manager with those operational issues. The bigger operational functions that are driven by the Board of Selectmen, driven by the community, are all going to be handled continue to be handled by the town manager. You'll see that there are 4 direct reports now to the assistant town manager, meaning human resources, social services, which is a new structure, which I'll get into in a minute, Parks and Recreation, and Communications. And those are all critical things, but they can be handled by the assistant town manager as opposed to being taken care of by the town manager on that regular basis. And she's going to continue to work with the town manager on a daily basis anyway. So what the town manager is left with is essentially 6 major operating departments: inspections, land use, finance, DPW, fire, police. Now, structure-wise, police, fire, DPW, their structure is essentially the same. There's a few different pieces that will move around, and I'll talk about those. But the inspections, land use is again a restructuring of several different departments, which I'll talk about in a minute. And same thing with finance, which currently has about 4 or 5 different divisions that will now be covered under one department known as finance. So here's of the current organization, the proposed organizational chart rather. Currently, there are 15 operating departments. It will now be consolidated to 7 consolidated departments with 4 direct reports to the town manager. The town clerk is considered to be, you have 6, but the town clerk will also continue to report to the town manager because even though she is elected, she still reports on a day-to-day basis to the town manager for operational purposes. So as far as the proposed organizational chart goes, human resources, social services, parks, recreation, communication all report to the assistant town manager. The finance director will report to the town manager, but the finance department will now include treasury, accounting, collections, assessing, purchasing, IT, and will all now report to the finance director instead of the town manager. So which creates a true finance director's operation in most organizations. You see that they're structured very similarly. And in land use, you've got a situation currently where you have several different divisions, but they all could be held under one reporting structure, which, by the way, creates a really important communication tool. So you have land use, conservation, economic development, all under one roof, which means that they're all thinking about the same thing, but from a different direction. But they're all going to be thinking about one ultimate goal, and how do you develop the community over time? What's the strategic look for the town, and how's that going to look in the years to come? Welfare and social services should eventually be led by a social service director who would report to the assistant town manager. The welfare program should no longer be under the management of the town manager's office, as I mentioned earlier, and by the senior executive's assistant. That's just a challenge in the sense that, first of all, I'm not sure that the office serves the clients well in terms of the structure and how that is currently set up. I think this is an issue that is one of which is a very private type of situation for the clients, and it doesn't lend itself to that kind of a thing. On the top of that, the executive assistant is dealing with so many issues that are critical to the operation of the town manager's office that gets muddied quite a bit by those kind of challenges, because each one of those clients can take quite a bit of time, and it certainly pushes the work back on the executive assistant in an unfortunate way. I also want to mention too that the HR, there should be actually an HR department, which is headed up by an HR director. I was just mentioning earlier that I was an HR director at one point in my career in a large city in South Florida. And now I'm actually, back to the future, I'm actually serving as an HR director in a city in Rhode Island now. As an acting director until they get a new director. And I will tell you, just by being in that job for a couple weeks, I can tell you that the complications of that one job makes it almost impossible for the assistant town manager to focus on anything, because the time it takes to deal with very, very complex issues. The rules and regulations and the laws associated with HR work nowadays are so complex that it just makes it extraordinarily difficult to get the work done. So it really needs to be a standalone operation, again, reporting to the assistant town manager so that continuity stays in place. So the proposed organization, with communications, is the newest division of the town manager's office. Communication coordinator will report to the assistant town manager. However, the coordinator will also work with the ATM, the town manager, and department heads and the select board regarding your communication strategy. So communication strategy has changed dramatically over the past 5 to 6 years. Why? Because newspapers have gone away for the most part, or they're online now. They're not actually a person writing a newspaper and handing it to people on a regular basis, which, by the way, was the direct link for most residents in the community to know what's going on, right? So now we find cities and towns find themselves doing newsletters, sharing information through stories and putting stories out about what the board is working on right now so that people stay informed and the residents know what they're voting on, so they're not just going into town meetings knowing that this is an article they had never even heard of. So I think it's a critical piece of the way organizations are going to function going forward. Inspections and code enforcement will continue to report directly to the town manager until such point that the inspections can realistically be housed in the fire department. I really took well to the suggestion by the fire chief on this. This was a new one on me because I've never seen this done before, but I've actually seen this, but the structure has worked well in another community here in New Hampshire, and it makes total sense to me how this came about. Where the inspections department would actually work directly with the fire department to handle, fire inspections as well as building inspections and putting them all under one roof, and they all coordinate their efforts under one department. They are public safety, which makes better sense to me anyways, that they wouldn't be separated. They'd be combined in the same department. The zoning administration, however, is a different piece, which is combined with the building inspector, which to me, in my opinion, should stay in land use, because it is a direct link and piece of the work that the land use people do. But I think we really should be focusing on getting another land use planner in there to help out with the day-to-day stuff, as well as doing the zoning administration on a day-to-day basis, so that the director can stay focused on doing the long-term strategic planning for the town. All right. And so as the police department goes, there should be a third lieutenant in the ranks, which will help to balance the administrative responsibilities of the department. It also helps to manage the responsibility on a day-to-day basis. And by the way, when you have a situation where one of the lieutenants is off duty for whatever reason, you don't have everything falling on the shoulders of the other lieutenant. So having three, I think, and this is the way I've seen it happen in many organizations I worked with, we've gone to that third lieutenant. Or a deputy and 2 lieutenants, just to give the position some relief when in fact it gets overwhelmed by the day-to-day operations. Even though as far as DPW goes, even though it's one of the most challenged departments with respect to filling of vacancies, the organizational structure was good. It was actually very well designed. You just didn't have the people filling the roles. So that was something which I thought was quite interesting. The one change that I would recommend is that the town engineer position become the deputy DPW director, because now you're creating a succession plan internally. So it stays on the same track. I love this picture, by the way. Every time I walk at this picture, this is a tremendous picture of what Exeter is all about. The Parks and Recreation is now report to the assistant town manager, but they also need some additional support to keep their organization current and vibrant. As we found that the additional assistance is included for senior citizens programs. So senior citizens programs are probably one of the fastest growing programs of any community organization right now, because the senior population is growing rather substantially. And we need support to provide them on a day-to-day basis so that they can actually have programs. And by the way, seniors today are younger than they were before. You know, I'm in that rank now, so I can actually speak to that very well. I'm not rushing it, believe me. But yeah, actually, seriously, the younger senior citizens want to do more. They want to be involved in more programs. They want to actually partake in really active lifestyles. So I give the Recreation Department the credit for trying to push forward on that initiative. Additional assistance needed in the parks and maintenance area with only 2 individuals. I don't know how they do this, by the way. 2 individuals that maintain the parks here, and they're all beautiful parks. You know, so they're just 2 very dedicated guys. But again, if one of them goes down, what else you got, right? So you really need to have about 4 to run this properly. And so it's one of those glaring things that I see that really needs to be done. And I know that, listen, I know by asking for more positions, that's a challenge for every city and town in America. But I'm just telling you how it should be working better. And an organization, you can develop this over time. It's not something that you'll develop overnight. The good news is that you now have a plan, all right? You didn't have a plan before, right? So I think that's the difference in how we're going to proceed from here. Internal communications, throughout my time at Exeter, I know that there is an organizational tendency to become siloed with respect to your internal communications. This is largely driven by the current structure of the organization and competing demands placed on the town administration. More streamlined organization will help with this, but we also are suggesting that there be weekly team meetings. And they be held between the new department heads and the town manager and the assistant town manager. I will tell you that was the one change that I made probably 10 years ago when I was in Foxborough. And I was in the same, actually I should say, I went back almost 20 years when I was in Dedham before that, where I walked into a room where the people in the room didn't know which way to turn in terms of their organization because they had not communicated with each other on a regular basis. And by the time we finished, I held those meetings every single week for an hour. And by the time, and I would purposely go late to those meetings because I wanted them to talk to each other, to get to know each other, to understand develop those relationships internally so that they can then feed off each other and become more efficient organizationally. And by the time I was done after about 2 months, I had to shut them off. When I walked into the room, I said, okay, enough. Let's get back to work, right? But they would then, after the meeting was over, get back to those conversations again. And they were constantly starting to share information with each other, realizing that I can get a lot more done if I ask for your help and if I can give you my help as well. So it works a lot more smoother when you do that, have those kind of meetings. And Russ, I think, is already starting to experience that. He's starting to see that.
Yeah.
So the town manager and the ATM should meet with the chair of the Board of Selectmen on Zoom or person on a weekly basis. Town manager and the ATM should also keep the remaining board members informed either by telephone or email or in person if you're available to meet in person. You should come in and just have a list of things. But I encourage you as board members to have a list of things that are important to you, and so we can keep our time efficient to try and get things through those things pretty quickly. And if they don't have the answer for you, they will have the answer, giving them a little time to get the information for you that you need. Because I know you're asking those questions because your constituents are asking you, and I think that's being respectful of how the community operates. I appreciate that. One of the other things that I learned was that proactive labor relations. I met with all the presidents and the executive boards of the various unions not because I wanted to negotiate with them. I had no interest in doing that. And my purpose in doing that was to understand the relationship between the town management and labor, and is there a proactive relationship? And this is not different, again, from any place I've been, is that, it's been my experience that if you work closely with labor and you help try and solve problems together, you get a lot better result from the organization and from the contract. You end up with a contract that's proactive as opposed to reactive, which I think is really critical nowadays, because there are so many competing interests on the unions themselves. I often say this to people, and people think I'm a little crazy when I say this, but I think the union president's job is one of the toughest jobs I've ever seen, because they're constantly being barraged by all of the needs that they have. But by the same token, sometimes they just have to reach out in an unproductive way because they're frustrated because they aren't getting met with the kind of response that they need from management. So I think my way of looking at that is like, be proactive with the unions on these things. Sit with them and go over what's on their list. And they can't, and if you can tell them, hey, look, I can't address all these, but I might be able to address some of these. But I could use your help on these too. And then you end up with a proactive discussion, so to the point where you don't have to always be at odds with each other in terms of getting the relationship going. So there's also a perception that I don't think the perception is that far off. And instead, again, it's a reflection of the market right there. Or at this time, is that the wage and compensation offerings are not as competitive in the regions market. But I didn't get into that too deeply, because that would have been a whole study unto itself to do that. But I just see it as a reflection of where it is everywhere right now, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was that much different here. An opportunity exists to work with labor to develop ideas, options, and possibly solve some things that you might proactively do. You wouldn't proactively do if you wouldn't do otherwise if you weren't proactively engaged on these issues. Succession planning. So there are several organizations that within the town that are actually doing some succession planning now. That includes administration, police, fire, parks and recreation, town clerk, and information technology. However, there are several that were not, and for in various reasons, because some of these jobs are one-person operations. Some of them are just very difficult to find anybody to work in these organizations right now. Building inspection being one of them. Economic development, there's limited resources there. Public works, we talked about, human resources, social services, finance. I've talked to several recruiters over the past few years now, and they all say the same thing: good luck trying to find finance people. They're just not out there. And it's because there isn't really a training ground to develop finance people from municipal government. Massachusetts recently developed a program with the Mass Municipal Association where they're developing finance people through a training program to proactively address each one of these different functions. But I will still tell you that it's still a challenge, because they're trying to get kids even out of college to focus on this. There's a real effort these days to try and find good candidates. Departments that have not planned for succession planning have been limited by low staffing levels, vacancies at the top of the departments, or limited interest in promotion from existing employees. Some people just don't want to go any further than where they are. Succession planning for these departments must be a consideration for any future recruitments. So in other words, where do you start this? From the beginning. When you hire people from the beginning, make sure they have the right skill sets to take the job, not only for today, but for tomorrow. See what kind of skills they have, and so looking for more of a skills-based recruitment process, as opposed to just an interview and where you've been and what you've done in the past. I look to hire people with good skill sets, and I've hired numerous people over the past several years that had no experience in municipal government, but actually had tremendous skill sets, and they've turned out to be unbelievable department heads. So I think that's something we have to constantly think of. Succession planning begins at the lowest level of hiring in an organization. Hiring decisions should be based on assessment of sound skills. A formalized employee department development program is needed at all levels of the organization, and the entire organization should develop succession binders for each position. So what that is that every position has an operating manual. That includes secretaries as well as executives and managers. So that we coined the phrase in our organization in Foxborough. We used to call it the truck binder. So in case somebody get hit by a truck, we would actually have a binder to show that person how they run that job the next day. So you plan for the worst, but it also is a very, very practical way of telling people this is what the job is all about when they walk into it. So the next person who takes that job has a clear understanding of what the role is. And by the way, it's a constant evolution of that work. You constantly change that work over to the point where people will offer new ideas and come up with new incentives as to how to get their work done in a more productive way. So here's the next steps. What I was hoping to do, and I know we won't get to all of it tonight, but is at least review, discuss, and determine which of the proposed organizational changes make sense. I think this is a discussion for the future. It's not one for tonight. I want you to absorb the results, take a look at those things and see what makes sense. Develop an implementation strategy of potential timeline for changes that is realistic and responsive. So, I know it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen over a course of time. Develop a financing strategy for staffing additions that can be addressed in the short and long term. So every single time a person changes over, relook at the position and say, is this the same position we want to have going forward, or can we make it look different and achieve a better role for the organization? Identify professional development plans for each individuals. I've actually found a couple programs working through the state, which could actually help you with that. And I'll work with the administration on trying to develop that. Evaluate job descriptions and salary plans for individuals taking on expanded roles, because there's some new department heads here that are actually going to have expanded roles. We're going to have to take a look at what that means for them, and in terms of the responsibilities they're going to take on, and what the value is for that. And then the last is to provide coaching and mentoring to the leadership team and those individuals who will be taking on expanded department head roles, because these are going to be new roles for them, and some of them have been doing. Some of them know the skills, but they've not applied them in the same setting that they're going to be applying them now. So there'll be many department head meetings on top of department head meetings, so it will continuously grow the organization from within. And then when you do that, you develop strength. You develop an ability to go forward in a very strategic way. The board will find this to be much more rewarding in many ways, because you'll find that the folks that you currently have who are already very good, by the way, you'll find that they're better at what they do, because they understand the organization better, and they can understand what the other people are doing throughout the other parts of the organization at the same time. So with that concludes my presentation for tonight. I hope I didn't take too much time in doing that. Tried about 45 minutes, so we covered a lot of ground. The report is thicker than I thought it would be, but it had to cover a lot of ground, and I hope you find it helpful. But I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Great, thank you, Bill. I have a couple comments and observations, but I'm going to defer for now. Start with Selectwoman Belanger. Do you have any comments or questions?
Really want to do that?
Yes, I do.
So I've read through this twice, and there's so much information. I have a third read planned, just to try to prioritize for myself how I think we might, as a board, want to approach this and work with the town manager. This is an incredible, incredible tool.
Great.
I am so glad that this has happened. There's only one thing I still haven't wrapped my mind around yet, and that's merging the inspections with the fire department. So I will want to talk to the chief more about that one, just to know how it works.
I can understand that, yeah.
It's the only thing that I'm not saying no. I'm open to anything. That was the one thing I was thinking, how does that work? And I'm proud of the work that this board does, our town manager does, our town as a whole, our employees, because they really step up when they need to. We're very fortunate. And that, with your training comment, I've been on the budget committee, I've been on this board, back to the budget committee. So one thing that we don't cut in budget is we value continuing education. So thank you. And thank you for tonight's presentation. I'm sure I'll have some questions because I keep my notes going. But yeah, that's it for right now.
Great. Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman.
Yes, I want to thank you for the very comprehensive look through our departments and structures and the recommendations you've made, none of which surprise me. But I've been here the longest, so I'm more intimately involved with the departments, et cetera. So I'm really I'm very much interested in the whole land use restructuring, and I think it all makes sense having less direct reports to the town manager. I think this is a place where we suffer from a lack of positions. And that's what makes the inspections going to the fire department so hard to really wrap your mind around, because we don't have we don't have a person that fits. We have one person that
I actually had the same reaction when we first discussed it. I said, but then I started thinking about it, saying this really does make sense. And I even talked to your current inspector, and he said it even made sense to him. I was surprised that he said, no, actually, it does make sense.
So that's, I guess, one of my personal goals is to sort out how that will work.
Great.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Thank you for this very thorough report. I also read it. I did not read it twice, but just once.
I'm on a third.
I wonder, I think that this is such a good guiding document, and I do wonder, and maybe this is like a question for Russ and his team too, but like, what are the costs associated with some of these things? Because I think that is a really important way to evaluate what steps we could take, because I imagine some of the steps actually would be revenue saving or, cost saving, especially as we're, starting to talk to each other more and sort of reevaluating the levels of positions. And, one of the things that I am most interested in is the recommendation to move the welfare office, because that does seem like such an important, critical role. And I don't know how our current person does that so well and run. It's just, there's so many things that feel like there's so much potential, and also, I just like, what is the roadmap to where you would see us getting to, and what are the costs associated with that? I think that would be helpful as we start to implement this.
Right. And as we dive into this report and we dive deeper into it, I think that's one of the main questions is, what is the cost of implementation? And we don't have that yet, but what we do have are recommendations from Bill and his group about which positions would be identified as ones that fit into the evaluate job descriptions and salary plans for individuals. We have that. And we also have a list of positions he's recommending we consider implementing. So we need to put a dollar figure to that, and we will do that as part of our budget process, and even sooner than that for the board, so you have it.
Yeah, and again, it won't be something that you'll do overnight, or it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you implement the whole thing. But some of it could be done. A good chunks of it could be done fairly soon, because it's a matter of shifting the deck in terms of how that's done.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Chartrand.
Bill, thanks for your presentation. What I love most about this report is that it's based on all these very detailed conversations that you had across the entire organization. The work you did having those conversations is wonderful. So thank you for that. I love that.
Thank you.
And it shows in the results of the report. There's a fine-grained aspect to this report that really comes out of all those conversations that you took the time to do, and you did it so efficiently. I'm really impressed. Thank you for bringing your long years of experience to bear on this town that I love so much. I can't wait for our goal-setting sessions. This is going to inform so much of what we do in our goal-setting sessions that we always have in March and April. It's very exciting what you're suggesting. A challenge will obviously be, marshaling all these great folks that we have on staff to embrace some of the changes that we envision. That's always a challenge, but it's a good challenge. And obviously in the conversations about those challenges will come adjustments, and that's appropriate. But I just can't, again, say enough about the fine-grained conversations that you had and how that informed this report. It's really wonderful. It's so exciting to be on this board as this report comes to us, to work with the town manager and our assistant town manager and all these department heads and all of our employees. It's going to be a very exciting time in Exeter, and thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Selectman Chartrand. Bill, and I echo what my colleagues have said, and I think it's real important, Mr. Chartrand, you brought up a good point, for folks at home to realize that, the basis of this report, you spent 6 months. You didn't just come up, for 1 week. You spent 6 months. You kept coming back up. You met with everybody. You met with the select board members individually, all the department heads. And then you came back and you had repeat interviews. And I know that before you wrote your report, you were in contact with everybody you interviewed to make sure that the information that you obtained was accurate. So there was a lot of time and effort that you put into this. And as such, this will not be one of those studies that gets put on the bookshelf. I think this is going to be a resource for this board and future boards moving forward. Selectman Chartrand, you took the words out of my mouth. I'm excited for April. That's our goal-setting session. I think that this resource is going to be the basis of a lot of our goals that we discuss. I like the approach that you took with the organizational chart. We have such a talented staff here, starting with our town manager, all of our department heads, and everybody that works under them. We just have a lot of talent here. We have a lot of dedication here. And we get close to that, but you came in and you looked at the organization as an org chart. Of course, you spoke with everybody, you got to know everybody, but you're looking at down the road, when folks retire, you're looking at the positions. And I think that that's an approach that we have to take when we're looking at your proposals, that they're not the personalities that we know, but rather how the organization should run. As such, these are recommendations, and there are some maybe we don't take, and there are some personalities that maybe it's not a match, and that's something for us to work out. But I think outside of the budget, there's some low-hanging fruit here that I think we can work on in the next year. We've already started doing some of it. You spoke of your meeting with the union, and I'd be interested if you go back in your notes as to when that meeting was, because we have done a wage reclassification study, and in fact, sometime late summer, early fall, we actually did do a wage reclassification across the board. So
that was earlier before we.
Yeah, so we've addressed that.
That's great.
The social welfare system, we have a position in our budget that if it passes next month, we will be able to go ahead and hire that person. And interestingly, the town of Exeter did have a welfare employee that's what they did.
We did.
And when they left, the need wasn't as strong. And so the former senior executive assistant was able to absorb that. And then when the current senior executive assistant came on, she had the talent to be able to absorb that as well. Continues to do it very well today, but of course the need has just increased, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years. So I think that's going to be an important position.
I just want to be 100% clear, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for raising that again, is that this is not to take away from any of the work, individually work that the senior executive assistant or anyone else does. It's just a case of it's too much for one person to do. And you get to the point where, okay, the hole is only so big for all the sand to go through, and guess what happens? Other stuff just doesn't get done. And as a result, we're always faced with, I was faced with these same challenges myself as a manager for many years, where you go to the meetings and just hold your breath and you say, do we cover everything for this week? Because I may have missed something because so many other things are happening at the same time. You're still going to have that, but I will tell you the critical things that I see, and I call this what is called the critical points of failure, is when you lose somebody in a role like that, you're really stuck, and you don't want to be in that position. You never want to be in that position. So I think that the work that, I'm actually amazed by the amount of work that gets done by the folks that you have here. But it's not fair to the clients, it's not fair to the organization, not fair to the town to do stuff that way if you're going to do it right. And the residents deserve that. So I think that you do the best you can under the circumstances, but this is an opportunity to kind of at least document the needs. This is a strategic document. It really is, and I think you have to treat it as that. So you go over the next several years. This is for boards, like I said, I think you mentioned the boards for boards to come. Take this document and then update it in a few years, and then see how it looks. And because as those structural needs diminish, and your organization comes together, you'll see that you'll be able to test the efficiency much more clearly at that point than you are able to do right now.
Agreed.
May I, there was one more thing I wanted to add, and I forgot to. I just want to thank all of our town employees,
No question. Yeah, no
department heads, for having these open conversations with you, because that stood out so much to me in your document, and it just made it that much more valuable. So I did
and for you as well, you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
I met
Thank
you. The gentlemen and members and ladies of this board have done a terrific job. Were totally honest with me about how they felt things should be, and that's really important. You have to sort of lay it all out there, because we can't fix it unless we know what the issues are. And I think the department heads knew that. You all did the same, and even the union members did the same. So I have to tell you, that was really critical to. That's how you fix things. You lay it all out there, and then you pick it off one by one. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to give kudos to our town manager, who's done a really good job of hiring top-notch people, and that's reflected in this report as well, Russ. And I didn't say that in my comments, but that was in my mind, and I wanted to loop back and really congratulate you on finding such great people over the years. And it's going to allow us to just get that much better going forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
And I'm very proud of all of them, so
Yeah.
I appreciate those comments.
So with that, Russ, I was going to ask if you had any questions or comments, observations.
So this is a big report. Obviously, there's a lot in it. And I think my takeaways are, right at the moment, just to do the kind of digesting that one would do when they get a report like this. But I think there's a lot of encouraging things in this report. And I think there's a lot we can do with it, and I'm excited about it, and so I share your excitement about it. There are some things, as Bill alluded to, that we're already doing internally that are a reflection of this report, and I can see differences already, so I think that's exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah,
Great.
so without getting overexcited.
Well, we appreciate you, wrapping your arms around it and
Very much so.
entertaining, it's hard to change.
Sure, and I also want to acknowledge, again, our employees who, again, it's been said already tonight, but they were very forthcoming in the report. I think the things that they said all were very value-added things and really help us move ahead and move the ball ahead. So that's a great thing. Yep. So I'm very happy about that. I'm very proud of it as well.
So if all goes well in March, we can get that position approved in the budget. Our goal setting is in April, and
One step at a time.
I think after that, we'll reach back out to you, Bill, for the next steps. But we're, I was hoping for a great product. This exceeded my expectations, and that's a compliment to you, to the department heads, Mr. Dean and Ms. Roy. I wasn't quite sure what we were going to get, but this is exactly what I wanted.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad it met your expectations. I actually I won't see you until probably April, May.
That's fine.
Because I'm taking I am retired,
You are
supposedly.
retired.
So I am going to take some vacation time and spend it with my wife and see our grandkids, and also travel to some distant lands for a little while and see how that goes too. So, but thank you all. It's been a tremendous experience for me. And I want to thank everybody who's here tonight, as well as everybody who couldn't make it tonight for whatever reason. I'm really grateful for their efforts. It's a great organization. I hope we can make it better.
Great.
Better.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Travel safely tonight.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Our next presentation is Stantec Consultants will be discussing downtown parking, pedestrian, and traffic study results. I'm impressed already with the ease in which you were able to bring your presentation up. So that's
Nice.
Okay.
Good evening.
good evening.
Good evening.
It's great to follow a pretty positive presentation like that, and hopefully I can build upon it. So just to introduce myself, my name is Evan Drew. I'm the project manager for the Town of Exeter's downtown parking, traffic, and pedestrian flow analysis study. I'm a traffic engineer by trade with Stantec out of our Auburn, New Hampshire office. And we wouldn't be here without the rest of my team, who are from Portland and Boston, and a lot of good people put a lot of good work into this. So very happy to be able to share this with you all. And to mimic my predecessor there, I mean, it's been great to work for the town. We had several staff out counting cars on the hottest days of the year, and they said, we haven't been in a town that has been so opening and had great ideas, rather than, what are you doing here? So, we all appreciate that. So this is going to be a very similar presentation to what was presented in mid-December. This is where we presented draft recommendations. So I actually want to kind of start with kind of why are we here? So back in early 2023, there was a Warren article putting together some money for this study, and my team was fortunate enough to be awarded this study, and we hit the ground running. So one of the first things we did was we established regular biweekly check-ins with town staff, and to really just get the ball rolling, get background data, really start to work with everybody to get to know the town, and to start working with the business owners and other residents in the town. So we established these project goals. These were the foundations for our study. Just to quickly go through them, initially just coming up with a comprehensive inventory of downtown parking within the project boundaries set in the RFP for the project, assessing the parking areas and regulations to ensure some long-term vitality for the downtown, identify opportunities for long-term parking, improve traffic flow and safety throughout the downtown, and establish or improve pedestrian or bicycle connections through the downtown, and to evaluate opportunities to improve potential enforcement. Enforcement was definitely a major, the history of the enforcement was a major item put forth in the RFP. As it is signed around the town, 2-hour parking limits, but through time of staffing and legalities, it's tough to enforce. So how can we help the town with that? So this was the downtown study area. So in total, there's over 1,500 spaces. Now you'll see that we counted both on-street public, off-street public, and private parking. And we'll get into why we also assess the private parking in this area as well. So we had over 500 on-street parkings, various uses. About a little over a quarter of them were signed as the 2-hour parking, with a remainder, 2/3, about that much for open parking. And then for the off-street, it was about 50% was private parking that wasn't PEA, about 10% was PEA. So we had over 1,000 spaces of off-street parking that we counted as well. So in our summary, some public facilities were not visible from the street is one of the things I wanted to highlight here. There was a few short-term spaces, but how can we more efficiently identify areas where we could use those short-term spaces, like in front of the bakeries or coffee shops? There was limited spaces for longer-term parking, limited permit-based on-street parking, and limited loading areas identified in the study area. As part of this study, we also conducted a survey. It was advertised through the town's email newsletter, posted around town. We did a door-to-door to talk to business owners to, just get thoughts, even initially, and to let them know that not only were we having a survey, but we were having a public workshop. These are some general items that came from this survey study. Over 50% of people park once and walk to multiple destinations, and over 50% of them typically park on the street. And almost 3/4 of them were saying that they were willing to walk at least 3 minutes to and from their parking. So this sometimes goes against the trend that people may see where they want to park exactly where their destination is. We got some good, honest answers from this and the public workshop. We had people identify their top preferred amenities downtown related to traffic, pedestrian, and bicycle infrastructure, and the overwhelmingly top 2 items were safer crosswalks and more parking. I actually did a little study before I came here just to see how much it would cost, just because I know it was also coming from the last, I think it was the 2018 survey done by Rockingham Planning Commission. And back in 2021, the average space for, say, a parking garage around the Boston area cost almost $30,000 a space for a parking garage. And that's just a 15% increase from the year prior. So I think just in context of how much these things cost was something worth bringing here today, of what adding more parking may mean. So as we went through, we looked at several times of a typical weekday on a Thursday. We began at 6 in the morning here. This is a great time to assess typical residents, as we do have a lot of second and third floor housing in the area, utilizing the downtown parking. It also gave us a good assessment of what's going on at PEA. So out of the entire almost 1,500 parking spaces, about 23% was being used by 6 in the morning. There was a few small facilities full, as you can see on the outskirts of the town, but pretty open downtown. Thursday, 9 a.m., as you would expect, starts to pick up. Businesses are starting to open, or people are visiting the coffee shops, parking to get to work. So we're seeing it's about 50% utilized. PEA is in session, so staff, students, if they do have a car, other supporting people are starting to fill up those spots down at Elm and Elliott. We are starting to see some filling in of Water Street. We're starting to see up to about 80% full on the block next to the town hall, but still available parking on either end of Water Street. The peak observed was Thursday at noon, as it makes sense. It's lunchtime. Businesses are open. People are going out to lunch, and PEA is in session. At this point, we observed that the municipal lot off of Water Street was completely full. Most of Water Street was completely full. Elm Street, Elm Street, but we were noticing that just a few minutes off of Water Street, we were starting to see maybe 60% full, on street and off street. So within that 3-minute walking distance we identified in the survey, we were seeing that there is some availability out there. But as you can suspect, if your destination, as you're driving into town, is on Water Street and you want to park in front of it, it would be difficult to find a spot. We came back about 6 p.m. Businesses are starting to close, restaurants are open, but other schools and other things are closed. People are going home, and we are seeing some relief on Water Street and some of the municipal lots, but certain areas are being used, as you would expect, by CDOG and other places. This I wanted to add in, that wasn't in the last presentation. So working with the town, we reviewed the land uses in the downtown, all kind of on the left. Based on IT manual, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, they put together a parking generation manual. So based on the size and the types of use, you come up with, this is how much parking you need to have. If we added up all the areas within our study area, all the different types of uses, you would need you'd have to have almost 1,900 parking spaces to accommodate all those uses. So if you're looking at that, you would think, oh, we need to get more parking. But From our analysis, from looking at the uses of how you'd use them, residential at night, restaurants, businesses during the day, we actually analyzed that on the right. The model's peak demand without some context to, some people are living above where they work, kind of those little things that might take some off the top. We assessed in the area you only need about 1,165.
Can I stop you?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the reason for in your judgment, for the actual parking demand versus the estimated?
It's to right size. I'm a traffic engineer by trade, so the IT manuals are, what we use to assess. They come from survey studies from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. People go out and count certain things, so the data is relatively limited. Sometimes you'll get land use surveys only coming from Florida or Texas, and we're a little different, so people may use parking a bit differently. Okay. So the idea is to look at what would be a more conservative requirement versus right-sizing it based on another manual. The Urban Land Institute puts out a manual about how best to, how all these kind of multi-use areas, which essentially is what the downtown is. You'll hear a lot of live, work, play kind of words being used for some of these mixed-use developments people are putting out. Well, what's more mixed use than a downtown? And so this is where you start getting people who live here, work here, play here, maybe the parking is only needed for certain sections during the day, and then it's open at night. So that's what went into this model.
Sorry for my interruption.
No, feel free. So again, our takeaways from this is the peak utilization is in the middle of the day, but it's still less than 60% of the total inventory that's available in the downtown. However, there's obvious high use and overutilized areas along certain sections. And we have more of that in the report, actually. So another thing we wanted to assess was parking turnover. So again, coordinating with the town, we were able to use the webcam that's posted up in the town hall and get a time-lapse video of 22 spaces on Water Street in front of the bookstore, in front of the Thai restaurant. And we looked at that over several days and kind of checked in every 15 minutes of real time to see what the turnover is like. So it's similar to what you may hear as a license plate study, just to see length of stay. Although in this, we didn't have to look at anyone's license plates, we just looked at the types of cars. We have kind of a breakdown that's in the report, but I just wanted to give a general idea that there was 2 of the 22 spaces were used completely the entire day that we reviewed. So now your inventory, if you can think about it, is now down to 20 in this area. The average duration was 2 hours, which, as you may know, is the signed limit on this stretch. We saw people up to, not including the people who were there all day, max length of stay is about 5.5 hours. But when we noted that those long-term stays were gone, there was turnover with a new car every 15 to 45 minutes. That was typically after 1 or 2 p.m. Just to start transitioning to the traffic, so we spoke a lot about parking, right? So this is a parking, traffic, and pedestrian study. So we thought parking was pretty important because this is a destination to go to, so people are coming here and going to your businesses. So I kind of took a step back into history. Fortunately, the town still has the 1968 traffic study for the area we reviewed. And I also found this map here that shows that Exeter hasn't really changed in its layout for about 200 years. And in looking at the 1968 study, the traffic volumes actually aren't that much different. They are a little greater, but if you kind of assess it in terms of growth per year, it's less than 1% per year. So we use this 1968 study as a kind of good jumping off point of like, all right, some of the things that this town needs are still the same 50 plus years later. So, but it's it's an interesting location, this town, because it's the hub of 5 state routes. You have access to Route 101, regional gateway for, not just tourism. You have people who live here, but you have trucking too. So we'll get to that, some of the trucking that comes through the town. So again, just a quick synopsis here. We did go into further detail in our draft report, and I did actually do a kind of a round here to take some pictures of the downtown at night, just highlighting certain things. Again, not trying to poke holes in everything in the town. I think the town's done a great job in the last few years, like addressing some of their sidewalk deficiencies, especially out here and like Lincoln Street. So this is just identifying, let's keep that going. I think a couple that I want to specify here is on the upper left in front of CDOG, the curvature and the pedestrian crossing as people are entering the town. There's tough sight distances there. I've heard even, especially when there's deliveries, right, in front of CDOGs, it's even tougher. It was tough tonight at night. I even wore my vest, and probably if you're walking into downtown, you shouldn't have to wear your high-vis vest, but I made sure I followed Stantec protocol, but also I thought I needed it. And in front of the town offices here, very long crosswalks with tough delineation there. Easy to see in the daytime, but it was tough at night with the again, lack is a negative word, but kind of a lack of pedestrian level lighting. There's a lot of roadway level lighting here that gives a general ambiance there, but it's tough to get those specific crossings identified. So again, more in the report here, some utility poles relocated in the sidewalk, make them less accessible. So why are we looking at this? Well, once you're finally parked in a parking lot and you want to go to your business or your destination, the town hall, you want to make sure that your final couple steps is accessible. In addition to, so parking. So what are some of the other things that is causing congestion on Water Street? What is it with people recirculating to make sure they're finding those business front parking spaces? It may be because there's a lack of parking wayfinding, especially for new visitors. If I wanted to come and I had a specific destination, I'd probably put it in my phone. I would get there, but it's not telling me where my open parking spot is or where I can go to a parking lot. I think a couple of years ago, I came down for the Chili Fest, and I went into one of the PEA lots because they had a nice big P, and it's parking. Oh, actually, it's a private lot. So we wanted to identify just maybe some deficiencies in some of the wayfinding. There's a lot going on in the downtown. We don't want to inundate a downtown with even more signs to pay attention to, but there might be some methods in which we can highlight, turn here to access the parking. So the real meat of where we're getting to today. So we use the data from the survey. We use the data from 2 public workshops and meetings. We reviewed past studies that we wanted to build upon that were done in 2002, 2018, 1968 too. And to come up with some, we want to take all the work that's been done in the town already and bring it forward, carry the football. And so we came up with 12 and a half recommendations here. We think vary from, low cost short term to higher cost longer term. So one of the first recommendations here was sharing a private parking supply. So some of the other communities I've worked in, say Town of Meredith, they'll have a couple of churches with empty parking lots most of the week, and they're full for a few hours on Sunday. So the Town of Meredith has come up with agreements with the church, including, that's a legal agreement, but there's a back and forth of availability for plowing or improving their signing to make these spots open for the normal business days. So just looking at the town of Exeter, you can see on the map here we have the utilization. We have about 100% utilization on Water Street, but then a short walk behind St. Anthony's Bakery is technically a PA parking lot back there that doesn't really have any of the same signing or restrictions, and maybe there's some formality that could happen because PA might just close it and may not be the place that people who do end up parking there now can get to. But formalizing these type of agreements, you can make them for select groups. Maybe it's employees for the downtown businesses, since they have a tough time finding parking sometimes, or select times to make sure you're not interfering with other businesses. So this was our first recommendation. Number 2 relates to the loading zones. Again, I mentioned CDOG. If we can formalize loading areas on Water Street, maybe with specific times, like I mentioned before, an underutilized morning, limiting certain deliveries before 10 a.m., before 9 a.m. Would be of a benefit. There's certain communities like the city of Cambridge, Mass, they'll actually, they have certain roads closed for an entire morning. This is when you're going to do your deliveries, and if you don't get them in, then you're shut. I talked to a business owner who owned the pottery place, and she said she had a delivery of, she works with clay for her classes. She said she had a delivery of clay come, and they said, well, I can't find a spot, so I'm just going to go. She's like, well, this is what I do. So it was heartbreaking to hear her story on that. So we didn't come up with you need it here, you need it here, you need it here. It requires further discussion with all the storefront owners to say, to agree on a certain spot. The different uses, like the restaurant, the bookstore, they may get different deliveries at different times. So there might be a fine middle ground for everyone to use best. But we do recommend at least one per block on Water Street at the very least, and maybe more if the need arises because of some of the underutilization on downtown parking. So a big one that was a topic of discussion at most of our workshops was bringing back pay parking. There was pay parking on Water Street back in the 60s and 70s, as the story goes, and it's so timed with the Historical Society that they released a video about it, I think, during the week of our workshop. They went into disrepair, and also the malls and other stores and suburbs was growing around the same time, so they were not seeing as much of the revenue coming in. But it's clear from our studies that people are coming back to Exeter, as you're all probably aware of. Pay parking, what does this do? So the pay parking is a way to help enforce and to remind people of this turnover of moving out of these spaces. Otherwise, that could be used for quick, as I mentioned before, 15, 45-minute visits. It can be of a nominal fee. I have a table here of some of the fees seen in other communities, like Keene, $1 an hour, and some violation fees that go with that. But there's different levels. I have some people on my staff who've mentioned that some towns have used meters. They're upgrading. They've got some used meters that they can sell secondhand. That could be a temporary solution. Or introducing smart meters. And the smart meters, they are able to take cards, pay by apps. You can even do the pay by apps actually as stickers on the used meters. They even have sensors. Did someone move and it resets, stuff like that. But it's easy to just say, yeah, just put pay parking, but maybe there's a defined kind of test period to evaluate the pricing on that. But as mentioned by the previous presentation, communication is important. So we need to be able to communicate that there is pay parking. How do you help people? Depending on the ages, I have a tough time finding which app to use for payment by app. So there needs to be all options on the table, in our opinion, if you're going to go this direction. So I put that as 3A because I think 3B also makes sense to be in this area. This is a draft, so we can reassess the recommendation numbers. Permit parking. So there's limited permit parking on Chestnut Street in Exeter. But we were noticing the overutilization along the areas along PEA. Again, likely the staff, and it's free on-street parking when their parking lots are full. We were considering, how do we address this if, and it rightfully has been brought up by town staff of, okay, so if you do introduce pay parking along Water Street and you start pushing people away, where are they going to find spaces? So This is a way we can start formalizing some of the parking along these streets. Again, small fees, I was mentioning up there, like Keene. I mean, Keene's actually one of the more expensive ones, but Manchester, you can have $20 a month pay and displays, and they can even be covered by the businesses, and they can give out the permits that are allowed. The tough part about this, and I think it's easy to say, how many permits can you use and what's the proper utilization for these streets? What's tough about some of these streets is there's a lack of, as I mentioned before, a lack of curbing, lack of sidewalks. When we went out there, you could even see, if I went back, we have an overutilization, so over 100% used as red, and some of it was red because some people were parked in the dirt, some of the people were parked on the curb, so it was tough to assess what's the right number here because people are just finding a piece of dirt to park on. So, again, communicating, working with businesses and the people to come up with the right solution for this. I mentioned before parking wayfinding. Just some examples of some more expressive signs to help guide people that really stick out. As I mentioned before, you can get confused with the PEA signing, nice and red. We can flip it with the Exeter blue, really to address, to point people to the right direction. Not just for vehicles, but for the pedestrians as well. Like I mentioned before, as you're actually parked in the parking lots, how are you supposed to know where you're supposed to go safely? So more pedestrian level signing, mapping could really help with identifying even some of the historic walks essentially downtown. As I mentioned before, again, it kind of comes down to communication. Developing a map of these facilities and working with the business owners to maybe get on that map. How does it all get enforced? And I think we had the police with us in the early meetings and just made it known that there's no appetite for the police to enforce the parking overstays. It's a tough job and it requires a full-time staffer to be out there. What our team has looked at before is out in Pittsfield, Mass. They actually use kind of like an intern system. These ambassadors, again, kind of, I hate to make it ageist, but younger people helping people with the payment or the pay by apps just to help guide, rather than be the eagle eye making sure everyone's following the rules. It's helping guide people through the rules. There's examples of they could be unpaid internship positions or other positions that would be through the town. Again, not through Department of Safety or like a kind of that level of badged enforcement. Some may say, well, how do you know how long people have overstayed and stuff? I mean, again, you can keep track of these, and I think we've even talked about deputizing through more civilian parts of the town. Going more on the traffic pedestrian route. So we kind of took a big hit here with reconfiguring the bandstand. As you all may have walked through here tonight, it's a tough intersection to walk through. It's a tough intersection to drive through. I can't even think about biking through it. That's what Rockingham Planning Commission is studying right now. But again, this is where the traffic engineer came in, and I reviewed some of the traffic operations there. And it's tougher the way it is now than if we made it an all-way stop. You have everyone gets an opportunity to get, you pass, you give it to the person on your left. Right now, because there's an uncontrolled approach, and you have a stop control approach near the bandstand that has limited sight distance, and you have another stop that doesn't know who's going next, all operations falls apart. The level of service, as my traffic engineers like to say, starts to fail. Even with the volumes I projected about 10 years out, having stop signs at all three approaches, and I know there's the String Bridge, which should get further evaluation, but all the stop signs produces a reduced delay, and the fact that everyone has to stop should improve safety through that area. What happens when you provide all stop? You start to reduce the pavement you need at the intersection. what can you do with the rest of the pavement that's out there? Because there's so much pavement out there. And our team threw together, again, concept-only, non-engineered drawing here, but using some of the dimensions and everything that we know of to give the town its downtown, its downtown green. When I was here in December, people were out taking pictures with the lights and everything like that, but didn't know how to leave, how to get out of the bandstand. So providing that connection, that center of the town, seems to be a great, again, as I mentioned before, a hub to this town. And this idea comes from doing our utilization, seeing that there is some opportunity to, I hate to, some of the areas are overutilized, but it would require reducing some of the parking spaces that were available minimally. I think I do have the net here, yeah. So it would be a net loss of 8 spaces just through that little segment there. But again, through all these strategies are not necessarily linear, but they can be used in tandem. Also the widened pedestrian paths, narrowing some of the travel lanes are generally important when it comes to downtown safety. One of the concerns that came out in our public workshop was actually the trucks. And during some of our public workshops, you could hear them engine braking through downtown. I did review New Hampshire DOT's laws of it, and you're allowed with some of those trucks to go about a mile away from Route 101, or as you can see up there, Route 33 through Greenland is a truck route. But I started to question how some of these trucks are able to go through downtown. New Hampshire DOT does have an oversized, overweight permit that can be reviewed by the town. So I can further detail that, I think, in the report. That's something I would update, how to get on that reviewer status for those permits. But as I mentioned about the parking ambassadors, not just having someone who's enforcing an eagle eye and telling you when you're doing something wrong, how can we provide a path for this to happen? So Bedford, New Hampshire has a trucking route, a plan with some appropriate signing. Other communities have done the same thing. You can provide the no through truck signing and plan, and you can also do the preferred truck routes plan. It could be, through an ordinance article there for vehicles on the roadways. But what's also important, as I mentioned before, everyone's putting their navigation in their phones. Trucks actually have their own GPS navigation programs as well, not just Waze and Google Maps. So if they're notified of these, they should be basically telling their drivers that they don't need to go into these roads. New Hampshire DOT, with their ITS programs, actually communicate back and forth with these programs as well. Coming back to some more policy changes, so adjust zoning for small-scale developments. It sounds like something the town has already been working on, but reducing and eliminating parking requirements for the small-scale developments. This is a way that we can, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I think what's coming with this is a concern by people who are moving into some of these new renovated apartments and trying to figure out a place to stay. But it's tough with the way the regulations are right now with how big your size is and how you're addressed for the parking in downtown. One of the things that'll be pertinent in a few hours here is revising the winter parking plan. Today, Water Street Municipal Lot is used for 33 spaces overnight, 8 on Pleasant Street, and Center Street lots being included as well. We thought that there was a lot of potential out there, especially, again, as there's a lot of people moving into downtown, to not have to scare them away to try to find a spot. And as I show over here on the right is the parking plan for Exeter, again, the municipal lot, and then you have over by Lincoln Street. We thought that, especially with how the last couple winters have gone, maybe there's a consideration to do it very specific on winter emergencies, specifying the bans or certain sides of the roads. And we have a couple of examples here. Again, Portsmouth, a much bigger example with garages, but actually the city of Lebanon actually has a plan of where you can park on certain days to help with the DPW and snow removal in the downtown. Again, None of this can really be effective unless there's a communication plan, placed on the website, E911 alerts to phones, things like that, to notify people that it's the case. This is a way that you can reduce some of the pressures, especially for the overnight winter parking in downtown. And I want to say finally, but this is one of the more generally broad one, is just multimodal improvements. So as I have here on the right is what came from the Lincoln Street project, what I consider a pretty successful project for the town to not only address traffic issues and traffic calming, but also giving people a nice place for pedestrians and to walk around in. It's a way to close the sidewalk gaps, in general for downtown, closing the sidewalk gaps, improving accessibility regularly, street by street. And we have a couple of locations identified here for enhancing crosswalks with bump outs and some additional pedestrian warning signing. We heard mixed reviews of the ones in front of PEA, so those are the RFBs. I mean, those are useful, but it might have a little bit of light pollution through downtown, so there's other methods as well. We kind of just put together a very, very quick map here of just a general improvements lineup, because as I mentioned before, it's not just about finding a place to park, it's about how you're going to connect your community together. So just addressing some of those sidewalk gaps. As I mentioned before, some of the utilization along Spring Street, Elm Street, regarding PEA, it's tough to give them stickers and say you have to hold to it unless we start formalizing parking spaces, marking them out, giving them the right curbs and the right engineered design for that. So it's just a very general idea of where some more enhancements can be done downtown for safety. So again, this is, actually, I guess we did 12. Some additional biking infrastructure as well. Again, concurrent with this study, RPC's been working on a bike ped plan. And lastly is consider reimagining parking on Water Street. So again, another big hitter here. This was again for improvement related to pedestrians. We saw, again, just like at the bandstand, there's quite a bit of pavement in front of, on Water Street in some of these sections. This is a big ask, a net of minus 33 spaces that would be absorbed elsewhere. But this would be an idea to convert angled parking to parallel, similar to other blocks along Water Street. And this is, again, concepts, not engineered yet, design. This was thrown under the current alignment, but some of the visions we've had internally is potentially shifting the roadway south, expanding on that sidewalk in front of these businesses, and it could be an idea to give potential, curbside dining or other kind of pedestrian, little parks, I guess you could say. We actually had someone at our stakeholder meeting talk about dogs and dog waste on their streets, and we didn't want to throw that away because we think that's pretty important, that you want to have your place look nice. So this is, again, if there's an expansion of the sidewalk, it could give opportunities for more green space or other things that could help with, again, as you get more people moving downtown who have dogs or something like that. So again, that's a small think of that, but just a consideration of streamlining the downtown Water Street here. Again, the ask is 33 spaces, which may be tough to chew on, but thought the town was a great candidate for this type of modification. So again, these 12 and a half that came out of this through all this work from our team, and thanks a lot to the town manager and the town planner to help guide us through this, to come up with these ideas and hopefully carry this forward from the studies of the past. So I'm open to questions, comments. I know I sent the draft report last week. I don't know what the process would be for that, to get comments on that. I would hope that everyone would get a chance to read it. I don't know when the comments would start coming. We can talk about that later, but I'm open to comments now.
I would also like to hear from the town planner if you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to share.
Sure, thank you. I'm in, similar position to you. I mean, we just got it, Thursday or something like that, and it's 100 pages. It's dense. There's a lot of recommendations in there. I have seen a few of them. I did have some comments for Drew. Evan, I'm sorry. Evan Drew, you got the two first names.
I know.
I know that well.
Yeah. I think I'm going to hold judgment on a few of these things. I have some concerns about some of them. I think we further develop them and talk about them, like this one right here, parallel to, from angle to parallel. I mean, I think there's pros and cons. Those all need to be, fleshed out, told to the board, what's the pros, and there's pros and cons to both. Like, for example, you look at this, one of the pros I see is that now you're having parallel parking all along in front of the Swampscott block and the Salt Cave and so forth. So you don't have that now. There's like kind of a section there, and then a lot of people cross there. I see people cross there when they come out there and they want to go across the other side. They cross where there's no crosswalk. But then on the flip side, parallel parking is difficult, and when you go, you're going forward, and you stop. You see a spot, you stop, and you're going to back up traffic. Because you have to stop. Whereas when you're angle parking, you go in. You see it, you go in, so you keep traffic flowing. And then when you pull out, you don't necessarily have to back up traffic because you wait for an opening. So parallel parking, if anyone's behind you, you're stopping traffic there. So there's there's a lot of pros and cons to both, but I think we need to flesh those out when the select board goes to, take each one of these recommendations and evaluate. I would come back with those pros and cons so we can make the best informed decision, and get some public feedback and, go through the public process as well.
Great, thank you. I mean, that's, when I was reading this weekend, that's the three words that came to my mind were, careful and deliberate.
Yes. I mean, at first we didn't know where the study was going to go, and then we thought about if they just said, recommend paid parking downtown. Well, that's something we could probably do in pretty short order. But with all these potential changes, and open space and pedestrian plazas and so forth, we're like, okay, this is going to take a lot longer to absorb, and because you wouldn't put in paid parking and on angle parking and then change it to parallel. I'm not saying we're doing that, but you wouldn't, this is more of kind of a longer term process.
And the paid parking perhaps would start to pay for some of the other ideas if we were to, right?
Yes, perhaps implement it, but at the same time, you want to figure out your configurations, because you don't want to be moving, maybe a kiosk would be better, because when you do kiosks there for certain things instead of smart meters where they're actually on stalls, so you probably have some more flexibility to change things. But I guess I agree with you. The point is there's much more conversation. Let's absorb the report. The purpose tonight was this is a final draft, just to see if you had any comments, see if there are any more public comments, and kind of keep it open for a while until we finalize the report, and then we'll go toward the discussion phase of going through each one of these recommendations and seeing what, where we want to go as a community.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Before we bring it back to the board, are there any members of the public that wish to ask questions or speak? Mr. Plummer?
Lang Plummer. Planning board question. When we approved the new gymnasium at PEA, there's parking under the whole building. My question is that included in your count?
No, we didn't include that.
The idea, I'm not sure that it's working very well, was to get their straight daytime parking off the street. But rumor has it that that's pretty much open most of the time, so I don't know just how that's used. That's my only thought.
Thank you.
No, that's a great comment. That was something that, that's a great thing to address, is we didn't include the parking garage for the athletics complex. We just didn't get the get the permission. We didn't have another person to go into there. We did have PEA facilities at one of our stakeholder meetings. They kind of just said, hey, it's for athletics. So, I think this kind of goes into some of those conversations, deliberate conversations with some of the, it sounds like the town has a great relationship with PEA. I wouldn't want to come up here and propose something that would ruin that. So it does require further agreements and further discussion with them. So, but hopefully in kind as some of the other improvements for their students through downtown.
Thank you.
Were you going to follow up on that? Yeah.
I'd just like to say something about that as well, because we have a great relationship. I have a great relationship with several people over at PEA. We were talking about a parking issue on another site that they own. They're very amenable. They did envision when they did the parking out back that by their facilities and so forth, they have plenty of open parking out back there that could house a lot of their employees and day students that use it. But we allow them to use Elm Street and Elliott Street, and and if they work over in that area, then they're not going to drive over, and I don't blame them. I might not either. They're going to park on Elliott and walk into where they think. But there is, so if we go with this possible permitting situation, some will be like, okay, I got to make a choice. I either got to get a permit or I'm going to go park in the free available parking that PEA provides them.
Great, thank you.
If I could add too about, we've been talking about the paid parking and the permit parking and the money there. So the money is generally assumed to not go into some sort of slush fund or to go to other things. The idea would be, it would be an established parking district. So the money that would come from these would then go directly into improving those areas, which again, as mentioned before, maybe a long-term vision is monies from now may be moved for improvements further. So same with the permit parking as well, potentially. So I wanted to add that in case it wasn't in the presentation.
Thank you. I just want to ask one more time, any other members of the public? And I want to see if there's anyone online. Selectman Chartrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one suggestion, and I'm a big fan of the report, but there's been a lot of focus on the illustration that accompanies step 6. And in public forums, social media, I would love to have something in this report that makes it very clear that some of these things are things we're going to work on shorter term, lower hanging fruit, and some of these things are things that are more visionary and out longer term.
Yeah.
Because it's been frustrating to me to have people not read the report and just react to an illustration that's put out through local media. There's some great low-hanging fruit in 1 through 5 that is going to help the downtown tremendously. Just the idea of expanding the universe of parking by making these private agreements, that's a brilliant idea. And the town's never really done that before. The idea of taking high utilization areas that are in high demand, that are clogged with all-day parking, and putting paid parking there so that it turns more often, that's a brilliant idea. So those are things that to me are like low-hanging fruit, and that's what we're going to work on right away, because that's going to start to make people realize that we have more parking than we think we do. And then we can get to the stuff that's a little more visionary, that people will be more amenable towards when they realize that we have more parking than we need, which is what your study shows. Between public and private, and if we can access that private, there is more parking in this town than we need. And your study shows that.
It was amazing to read the 2018, sorry to interrupt, the 2018 survey, and that was one of the recommendations that came from it, is like, hey, consider a parking garage. And that's why I wanted to throw out it seems so easy to say you need that when, hey, maybe just through a couple agreements and a couple signs or something, you might find those extra 50 spaces or something like that. So apologies.
And my final comment, Akil, that is my quote. This town has more parking than it needs. We just have to get organized and utilize it correctly. So don't come asking me for a quote, because that's my quote. This town has more parking than it needs if we get organized. And we don't need to put more asphalt down. We can make the downtown more beautiful, but we have to do the low-hanging fruit first before we do the longer-term, more beautiful visionary things. It's a great study. Thank you. If you could include that kind of tranching of these recommendations, like, here's what you do first, here's what you do second, here's what you do third.
We have a timeline in the report, but it may just be all bundled into one section that you have your thoughts, you've had your thoughts on all 12, and then you get to the timeline and you forgot what your so I think that's a great comment that we can do for the final, is to tie that timeline to each of them, to not, they're all not, as I mentioned before, linear or on the same timeline, and I completely agree with you on that.
And make it graphic.
Yep.
No, not just a list, but like give it some graphic punch, please, because that seems to grab people's attention. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm a big fan of this report. Thank you to Dave Sharples, our town planner, for all the work that you put into this. It's wonderful. Great stuff.
I wanted to also add in the report near the end too is, we don't provide costs in our study, but because we work with so many municipalities, and again, I'm happy to have followed the presentation that preceded me, is the costs and the budgets and where the money is coming from. I wanted to highlight certain grants that are available, billions of dollars that came from recent bipartisan infrastructure bills that are being finally given to these communities, not just the big cities, for big infrastructure projects. The Safe Streets for All grant gave $300,000 to the city of Keene, just Keene, to do a safety plan. So just to plan what they're going to do for their infrastructure improvements. And same with Bar Harbor, Maine, like 200. So there's money out there, and in our report we wanted to guide that, because it does seem overwhelming when you look at this. This to a lot of people is many years of dollar signs, and I just want to know that there's, let the board and anyone who reads the report know that there's availability out there for help.
Sorry to jump in and blurt out, Mr. Chair.
That's quite all right.
I'm very passionate about this subject.
Selectwoman Belanger, any thoughts?
I have a few, if I could, and I've got notes everywhere, so just bear with me. One of the things I did want to ask you about is, did you have a chance to talk to DPW about snow removal?
I have not
You
directly,
haven't?
not
Okay.
specifically about snow removal.
All right,
no.
well, because part of my questions are, what do we do if we wanted to reconsider the winter parking ban? But it's really important that
absolutely.
DPW weigh in on that, because they're the ones that removed the snow. And I did know that they did recommend that we could use the Center Street parking to add for winter parking. So lights, I will tell you, I really started noticing it. If I'm downtown at night, I'm in this building. That's just the way it goes. And because I was at the open houses those 2 times, and a few of us walked around downtown, we do have some very, very dark areas where the crosswalk is. And ironically, in front of the bands, in front of the town hall, to here is really bad.
I walked around downtown because I did come early, and the best pedestrian level lighting you have is in the scaffolding of the Iuka Theater construction.
Right.
It's clear, you can see where you're going.
Right.
You're not going to stumble. I tripped a couple times, so, not that you needed that in your face, but more scaffolding in the town. No, it's pretty apparent, and you think that the roadway lighting, whoever, Eversource or whoever operate, hey, we'll just make it LED up there, replace the old lights, and we're good, and your use is just more specific.
Yeah.
We actually decided to do that as a town.
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, it's good.
great
It's just, it's
where
for the
the
road.
lights are located.
Yeah.
We need to think about putting some closer to our crosswalks. So enforcement, it seems to me, I agree, this has been great, and thank you for, I was able to be in some of these meetings, these work meetings. But without the enforcement part of this, that's where our parking is going to loosen up, if you will, a little bit. So do you have any, can you give me any information on some of the other towns and how they do their enforcement?
Me personally, I do not, but I can definitely go back to some of our, some of my staff in Boston
just
who work
to
a lot
give us
closer
some
with that.
ideas,
Yeah.
because I understand the police department doesn't want to do that now.
Can I piggyback on that for 1 second?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't mean to interrupt,
Oh,
but
no.
the ambassadors, the parking ambassadors, is an intriguing idea. Could you, if you haven't already, maybe have staff reach out to the city that's doing that as a pilot?
Absolutely.
And get some results, some data. How is it received? Have there been any complications, any conflicts? Because on the surface, I think that's an intriguing idea.
Absolutely, yeah. That idea was put in by, again, we work with a lot of people across New England and doing these parking studies everywhere. That was in Springfield, Mass. So, even a bigger area with different demographics and everything
Definitely
too.
different demographics
It's definitely
in
different.
Springfield.
So, I definitely we put that picture in. We've carried that recommendation for a few months, and I will definitely follow up with them to see if what the follow up is on that.
Thank you. I didn't mean to.
No, of course, and I think Mr. Sharples might want to add something there.
On the models I've seen, it's usually civilian staff that, monitors enforcement. And depending on the types of systems you have, if you have the smart meters where they can tell the vehicle there, I mean, you don't even have to walk around. You can immediately know where the violations are, and you can just go right to them. But it depends on the technology. But usually they have some civilian staff. Sometimes they're housed, I think, Dover, they're housed under the police department. It's not sworn officer. It's civilian staff.
Yeah.
And then Portsmouth has a parking. I think they're downtown. I don't know who they're under, but you can, they have a little parking department, if you will. I mean, Portsmouth is a lot bigger and, multi-staffed. But, I would envision either ambassadors, or you go to a civilian to
safety department.
monitor for enforcement.
And now's the time to look at our options and what we might want to do with the report we just had the presentation on before this one.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Either way, you wouldn't want a police officer doing it. You would
No,
have
I get.
That's what the model is
right,
now.
but that's what we had. So I'm fine with that. I just want to know what our options are and how we might look at that. Am I okay to continue? So Northampton, Mass, I actually was there a few months ago, and my hotel, I was able to watch how that worked. And they have the meters like we used to have downtown, but they also had somebody walking around constantly on that. So definitely haven't talked to DPW, so we do need to have them weigh in on that. Because I was wondering about if we want to consider getting rid of winter parking ban and just doing it when there's a storm coming, do we want to consider what the cost and process would be to expand our permit parking? And this is why. I've come down at night and looked, and that's full for the winter parking ban, that back lot, and so wasn't over here. I did not go look at Center Street, but we haven't expanded that whole parking lot yet. So that said, I just want to make sure that there's a section in town, whether it's permitted or somehow, we're recognizing that we do have a lot of people that have to park downtown all year round, right? That live down here, and now we have 29 more units coming on, or approved, I should say. They're not occupancy permitted yet. So I just want to make sure that not only that the people that live here now and use the parking, but the people who are going to come and invest in our community and move here also have parking available to them. I just, the idea of, I don't know, I think sometimes of what they must have to go through. I mean, do they come home at night and because they're it's a full parking lot out there, they have to wait until 10, 11 o'clock and come back outside and try to move their car and they can't tell if they can do that until they're downtown and, I mean, out in this parking lot. So I just want to, I'm hoping that we can keep that kind of up there as far as a priority for parking, but we definitely, oh, one more question, sorry. So we talked during our meetings about the light timing at Portsmouth Ave and High Street.
Oh, sure.
Did that ever get, I know you did find out that we have the timing ability to make that change because of how the backup happens?
Yeah, and Dave did chime in on that too as well. Yeah, the DPW does have control over that intersection. It's even though it's state roads, it's town maintained. We didn't pursue that further. Optimizing the timings there. We even talked. There's communities in New Hampshire where I've worked for New Hampshire DOT and provide optimized timings for corridors like Main Street and Nashua and stuff. And then business owners would come out and say, "Why are you making people fly by my business?" So,
but that's all houses and stuff there. But so the only reason why I'm asking you that is I was wondering if you did look into that further, if we considered not doing a right turn on red during certain times. Portsmouth, I noticed, has done that. Just because I do experience it, other people do, where people are coming off of Portsmouth Ave and they're literally still coming, even though High Street going into downtown's green. So it is dangerous. I mean, it's crazy sometimes. So anyway.
It was absolutely within our study area. We were looking at, hey, what could happen with the traffic signal retiming there? That's maybe I don't know when it was last serviced, what the time clock and the controller says. So that could be considered low-hanging fruit with DPW. Like, hey, collect some traffic counts, see if we need to adjust some things. And you're absolutely right. There's ways you can sign either with a static sign or actually dynamic signs, like you'll see in Portland, Maine, of no right turn on red. Maybe if there's a pedestrian crossing or things like that. So there is ways to.
With the Academy Housing, now when you're going into town, now there's no lane for them to take a left-hand turn, so that's starting, I think, to back.
Oh, it's a four-way light there.
Pardon me?
It's a four-way light there.
Yeah, but when you're coming down High Street, it's
you're stopped.
If they're taking a left. Yeah.
One of the tough things about that light being there is, it's a gateway to your downtown. It is. It's the connection between the commercial, was it 3 lanes with a two-way left turn, like the two-way left turn lane, and you're going through all those lights. You come to that light, you get a green light, and you start going downhill towards the river. And then you're immediately at Sea Dog. So it's the go light for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Our town planner was talking about the flow downtown.
Right.
Because that's where it gets backed up. It's not just that it gets backed up on High Street. It gets backed up because people are going through the lights and they can't go anywhere because it's kind of paused. So, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think that I've seen anything that I haven't heard before. This is no comment on you. It's just that these are the kind of concepts that have floated around over the years. It's just nice to have them with some reasoning and some illustrations. And I second Selectman Chartrand's comments about we have to get people to look at more than just the pictures that they're seeing, because there's a reasoning behind and a different way of working, perhaps, or how you drive. I'll tell you, I never make a left off of Front Street onto Water Street, ever.
If you heard honking earlier, it was because of that exact movement that I saw. Not me, but I watched other people.
We tried a roundabout there one year. And I thought it worked well. It was the only time I'd taken a left around that bandstand. But it was not, it was a little bit too urban for the folks that lived here then. I really appreciate the amount of work that's come in. The one thing I probably already know the answer to with the width of Water Street and making the parallel parking, is there space there for, I don't know if it's Keene or I was looking at some other state perhaps, but there's a bike lane that's separated from the driving lane?
So actually Stantec, who my team is doing the Keene design, which is including the bike lanes. I would say while there is a lot of pavement, Keene prides itself on having the widest main street east of the Mississippi, which was very hard to tell people you could do a lot more with it than just drive. Again, we went through a very rigorous
I forgot that
process on that. So they're very proud of that. But that's a pro of just what they have and how best you can use it. So there is several methods. It's bike lanes are expanding rapidly throughout Greater Boston, which have even tighter right-of-ways than even Exeter does.
I just was bringing it up because if we go to parallel parking, then we're opening our car doors and whacking somebody on their bike. I look forward to the final part. When we were looking at paid parking at one time and changes to, when we were doing the changes to Lincoln Street, and one of the things that our town planner found was that further up beyond the train station, there were no, the parking spaces weren't lined. So we found out once we lined them, we actually had more parking on that street than we thought. Okay. And so I was just wondering if you look around Court Street, I don't believe is marked either, if that would make it.
Court Street's marked, but Elm Street is not. That's where we were seeing PEA.
That parking in the dirt,
presume, but people were parked up on curbs. Elliott as well, parked up on the curbs and the dirt, and that's why we were like, before we say, oh, you're allowed to have 30 stickers, well, do we know that we have 30 spaces for stickers, or do we have 20, or do we have 50? So that's why formalizing that a bit more would definitely help with that negotiation. For that.
And I'll make a plug for the smart meters, only because I experienced them in Concord, and it's kind of interesting to watch representatives go out into the cloakroom and they're on their phones trying to add more money onto their parking spaces, even though they're supposed to be in a garage.
We need to go back. I've been talking to our staff. We have, Jason Schreiber is like our great parking guru here. He's seen it all. Like there's been parking meter companies that they'll come install it they get a fee off of the. So there's different ways this can be arranged. Could be, like you said, Northampton sounds like it was the way it used to be. Maybe that's not the way, but there's always temporary solutions as well. And that goes for multimodal, intersection improvements and things like that you'll see in the report is, people are realizing how much this stuff is costing, but can we put out some temporary lines, some pylons, some things out there to really see how people react to it as being really effective? Tactical urbanism is kind of the name of it, but you can do it with a bit more engineering. I will plug that. Do it with more engineering from a PE, but it doesn't have to be several years of, while we're here, let's do utility, sewer, let's do all this. Right. Let's see if this works. And is this the way to go with a couple stop signs and some practice and some warning, some communication to people.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman McKenna?
I don't have anything that has not already been said, so I will add my thanks and my +1 to Selectman Chartrand's quote, if needed. I endorse that quote.
For the price of
3.
That's right.
I said it too, 3.
And thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it. Again, careful and deliberate, and much like the first presentation, this is not a study that's going to sit on a shelf. It's a resource as we slowly move forward. So appreciate all the time you and your staff have put into it.
Thank you.
Again, Mr. Sharples, thank you for all your efforts on this as well. Chief Wilkin.
Just a minute from public safety.
Sure.
It's an exciting plan, and I'm looking forward to that. Couple of things that pop out, not to dwell on the picture, but just to make sure we do our due diligence. We do make left turns there 20 times a day.
I'm sure.
And the way any intersection that looks like that needs to look, somehow I need to kind of visualize where traffic is going to be able to come to a stop and do what they're supposed to do, pull to the right, and we push an engine or a ladder truck around that corner, it's never going to make it the way it's depicted. Fully realize it's not engineered, I get it, but perhaps a left-hand turn lane that would allow for a left-hand turn would be a great thing to have. I caution you on narrowing Water Street, even though it sounds like a great idea. 80% of our call volume is downtown, and when we park an engine or an ambulance there, even if it's temporary, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, there's just no way for traffic to move while we're monopolizing the street, and we have to double park. So just, and I'm not endorsing nose-in parking or parallel parking, but maybe one side of the street to the other.
No, that's incredibly valuable.
Just so we can really work, and I look forward to being part of whoever replaces my position will look forward to being part of the whole process. But I am very excited about a better way to well mark and protect our crosswalks. And you mentioned the word light pollution, and although I drove up Front Street for 15 years and not all of them, we had blinky lights at the crosswalks, but at the Arches and the Stone Church and all the places the students walk, it's always been interesting trying to keep them safe. And I look downtown, and there are so many people that do not cross on a crosswalk. It's causing a safety issue downtown, and there's very little way to enforce it. How do you enforce parking? How do you enforce crossing, on the street? But bump outs and well marked, and maybe a trade-off is a blinking light at a crosswalk, so somebody that doesn't know Exeter will know where they are instead of just darting across to the bandstand and really getting a chance getting hit. We don't need the business that bad. So, really be careful with that. The only thing, the last thing I just want to mention is, trucks downtown, that is New Hampshire 27, that is New Hampshire 8. It's going to be tough. And I'd love to say trucks have a great GPS system, but at least one truck a day has to stop at the train trestle because they don't follow a GPS that is designed for trucks, and it's not conducive to traffic. So between my vehicles down there and tractor trailers, it's going to be tough. But I too would love to see delivery parking on every block downtown so people aren't double parking and really messing up traffic, because it's difficult for us too. Sure. Driving selfishly, but it's a great study, and I've just barely cracked the cover and look forward to reading more of it. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Wilkin.
No, thank you for that comment. No, I'm the engineer background. This is a planning study, but I definitely, as one of our members of our team, we were working in Stoneham, Mass. He got to ride on the fire truck as they were showing how tight the turns were. I was like, where was my invite? So if I could get on your truck when we start looking at the turning templates, I'll sign up. So, but no, absolutely great points there. I completely agree. A little bit more engineering with the turning radius, and these are all things that I assume that you may have to look at when you're looking at developments for access during fire. So no, those are absolutely great points. So thank you.
Evan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I got the name right?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. In all the years I've lived here, I only took a left from Front Street to Water Street once. You were my passenger. You said, what do you do when no one does that?
Yeah. I only do it if there's no traffic downtown, then I'll do it.
After 8, we might be able to do it.
I'm telling you, it's crazy, I won't. It's good to see you in person instead of on the screen.
All right. Have a good night, John.
You as well.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Greg, thank you for hanging in there with us. We have 3 pieces of good news this evening. The first was the Keegan report. The second's the Stantec report. And I was so excited to see on the local media last week that there was a story on Planet Playground. I insisted that the town manager invite you here to tell the board about it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to do a brief recap just to bring everyone up to speed. Planet Playground's been there a long time. Been an iconic playground, so we understand that. I came here 20 years ago, and it was fairly new. So give that with a grain of salt. In 2016, we brought Leathers and Associates back to do a playground examination and inspection. They outlined specifically, and it's still on our website, on the deficiencies of the playground and how it needed to be replaced. Granted, now it's 2024, so it's 8 years, so it's been 8 years in the process. So we started the road down to coming up with a design in 2019 when Melissa was still with the Parks and Rec. We went down on one Saturday morning and we collected over 100 suggestions of what they would want to see in a new playground. Some of them a little far-fetched. A volcano was one, a roller coaster was another. But it was the basis that we saw. People were still enthusiastic. They were still enamored with Planet Playground. Obviously, we know what happens in 2020. Things got settled down for a while. And then in 2021, we started talking about where could we go again. We knew the obstacle was we didn't own the property, so we weren't going to invest on that property, and we were trying to examine different avenues. Well, property it gets bought and sold a couple times, falls by the wayside. In 2022, we again are looking for a grant. We understand the cost of playgrounds are very exorbitant. So we wanted to go after the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And for those that don't know, it is funded by offshore drilling to go into outdoor recreation. Well, 2022 came, but we needed a kind of a basis of a design to go under. So we launched our first survey that spring. And we threw a number of elements out there that we wanted people's feedback onto what will be the new Planet Playground. We took those, incorporated in 100 things. They stayed on a sticky board in the back of my office till 2022. So for 3 years, I held on to those sticky notes. In 2022, so the first survey, we had over 300 people respond. And I mean, when we said we were a comprehensive survey, it was a comprehensive survey. We asked what style they were looking for, and there's various styles for anyone that knows playgrounds. What elements, but specifically we wanted to target accessibility. So we asked what accessibility they wanted to see. Well, we collected all that data and we went out to the major playground manufacturers and said, here you go, here's the data. Come up with a design. To give you a point, Park Street Common and Kids Park were about 100 to 140, give or take. So those small scales, you could see a massive scale. We couldn't come up with something that wasn't big. So out of the 7, we narrowed it down to 3. The top 3 ended up being a castle from Game Time, which was one of the things appeared high on the survey. 2 space-themed playgrounds, but the price did come in extremely high, so we had to go back to the drawing board. But in the meantime, we had a session where they had the fly-throughs. It was great. You could see what an actual playground would look like. So out of the top 3, after that, we launched our 3rd survey to narrow down to the top pick. It was very close. Pretty much about a little over 100 each, we got 30-something. But Miracle Playground was the leading vote getter and actually the most affordable.
Greg, can you define we? Who's we?
Parks and Rec.
So your department
Yep.
looked at the 3 and made the decision. Okay,
Yep.
Thanks.
So we were starting to negotiate at the time with Athena Health. We couldn't come with a negotiation. We tabled it. In 2023, the department then applied for an LWCF grant using the Miracle concept plan. Again, this is a concept plan. This is not set in stone. So we applied for it. Having met with Melissa Roy, our assistant town manager, we're going to formulate a playground subcommittee. We talked about at the last rec advisory board, I believe. So we have 3 members. We're going to look for members from the public as well, and hopefully maybe a select board member that would like to sit on there and discuss what we can tweak of the concept plan, what we can replace, what we can add for site amenities that would enhance the project, and then come up with a fundraising mechanism to offset those costs. Things that the department has talked about, just like the current plan of playground, memorial pickets, a mural wall to accentuate the artistic part, as well as a picnic pavilion, maybe an amphitheater, some site amenities, picnic tables. Obviously, it could be a big draw. So other than that, we're actually still waiting to hear from the state if we have moved on to the second phase of the round. So obviously, closing on Planet Playground in a couple weeks are going to be essential for us so we can move forward. So if we are selected by the state of New Hampshire, we then move on to the next round, which is going to the National Park Service. And the National Park Service then vets everything that we had submitted. And from there, if we are, it's just a stamp of approval. Then it comes back to the state this fall, and the state, the governor and the executive council vote on it just to approve it, and then we're awarded the grant. So at no point this is moving quickly. It's going to be a slow, methodical process, and we're looking forward to working with the public more to get more input on what other site amenities and what we can do to offset the cost to the taxpayers.
Great. Thank you for the update. And I think, obviously closing on the land is huge.
Yes.
It's just such a great thing moving forward. An observation and 2 suggestions. The observation is when you were, and I was able to join you, when you did the open house at Park Street Common, and it was incredibly well attended by folks who were immediate abutters in the neighborhood, folks that just came and used it. And you had the 2 or 3 different options that they could look at for, how you were going to rebuild it. You took suggestions. And I just remember what a positive experience that was. And we were there for, a couple hours?
Yeah.
That afternoon?
Yep.
So I'm hoping that at some point, I know you've already narrowed it down or whatnot, but doing something like that on a wider scale, maybe advertising, an open house once the weather gets better for folks to come out. I just remember how well attended that was, and it was a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. I think that's going to be, especially when we look at the other site amenities and the other options. The one thing I do want to keep people aware of. So as of January 1st, our state rep, Gabby Grossman, was actually one of the sponsors. We do have a new law that states that all playgrounds need to have a resilient surfacing to get to them, but understanding that no one wants to see a sea of rubber. So, there has to be a balance there, but that's the input we're looking for from people, knowing that we're going to stay within that budget. But I think with how vibrant and enthusiastic the residents were to buy into the original Planet Playground, I think we can recreate some of that. We can't recreate getting 100 people to come out 4 straight weekends. We have a hard time getting volunteer coaches, and you obviously know you have a hard time getting volunteer board members. So, but I think getting behind them and getting more engagement to get people to get excited and be a part of the next phase that will last us for 25, 30 years.
So that leads to my 2 suggestions. The first, I applaud your efforts to put together a subcommittee. Please find a way to communicate that you're doing that so that you get a real diverse and inclusive representation. Obviously, you'll have 3 members of your rec committee, but and hopefully reach out to me, because I've had a number of people who've approached me since the article who are interested. And I think getting a very diverse and inclusive group is going to make the project that much more positive. And also, as you move forward, as you very well know, one of the biggest things that I look to do in life, but also serving on this board, is to make life better for children and for seniors. and for incorporating children with seniors. So however way we can rebuild this so that seniors can become a bigger part of kids' lives and vice versa, I think will go a long way.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
I actually joked around with the staff that we should add the big thing down south is senior playgrounds. Yeah, they have them, and it's more of a mobility, stability type of workout thing. So if there's ways we can incorporate some of that stuff. Even you and I can go in there and have a fun time. But I think the most important part, and this is where the resilient surfacing I think is going to be important, is we've seen too many times where grandparents are in walkers or in a wheelchair that they can't go and enjoy their children or grandchildren playing on the surface like that. And that's, I mean, including shade and seating, I think is important. And there's awesome opportunity here to get the whole committee or the whole community behind this.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yep.
Great. Selectwoman Belanger, any thoughts?
No, I'm excited. Can't wait to see how it works out.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Selectwoman Gilman?
What age do these playgrounds usually drop off being used? Is it like 10 or 13?
Technically, they all have an age limit. It's usually broken up from 5 to 2 to 5, and then 5 to 12. And I can go into a lot more details, Julie, here. The ASTM, there's all kinds of different regulations. I know when we were going through the process, a lot of people asked, what do you offer for teens? And unfortunately, there's not much unless, I guess the one thing, in the current design is the zip line that's there and the ADA zip line. So now we can have people that have disabilities that can zip along with their friends. And it's a question that it's tough. We have kids in our teen camp that are they're going into 9th grade and they still have fun on Planet Playground. So that tells you, you build it correctly, they're going to still enjoy it. I go to the playground with my kids and I still get on the swings and go down the slides.
So do I, but my kids are 27 now. But they used to hang out, in the evenings. They could walk, they'd make a trek actually to the Main Street School because that was the newest equipment that was around at during their youth. And they just would go, sit on the equipment or do the swings or something. And I just wondered if that was, that's just a point. I guess it's just a point. And then the other thought I had was to either get people excited to volunteer or to understand what it takes to design a playground. Using our van to do a couple of trips out to Park Street and Kids Park, just because things have changed so much since Planet Playground was built.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I was having this conversation with Russ last week. The standards have changed so much where you could walk through Planet Playground now, and I understand it's grandfathered, but there's fall zones and there's critical fall zones. And I don't want to go into the details of it, but there has to be, it's not as condensed as it should be. Just recently, actually, City of Concord was awarded LWCF. They're rebuilding a Leathers playground that was built approximately about the same time. Talking to their director today, they're going to not go with Leathers, not specifically go with Leathers. They're going to put it out there and see what comparables they can do. But you look at it, he goes, Greg, you compared the design of what Monkey Acres is to what it was now. There's sight lines now. There's no overlap. There's ramps. There's a lot of number of things. And that's the one thing that people have to understand. You can build a playground, and ADA is the lowest level of accessibility you can have. ADA chips or the wood chips are ADA accessible, but anyone that pushes a wheelchair and they're a walker, you're not going to push through it. So yeah, re-educating people that nostalgia is great, but unfortunately standards have changed, and as the community needs to change with it and make sure that we're building something that is going to be compliant for many years.
Actually, I made the floor speech on that bill that passed, so I was very proud of that.
And one of the other sponsors actually reached out to us in our state association pretty much threw it on my shoulders, like, all right, you guys seem to be getting it right in Exeter for your playground, so would you help shape that? Because at first the wording was a little too much. We didn't want it being totally uniformed, and there's some good things that go with the wood chips. The textile for those that have sensory issues that might want to play with them. I mean, there's benefits to everyone.
That's it.
Any thoughts down here?
It's exciting.
I agree. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the update. Sorry to keep you out late.
No, it's my bedtime. I'm going to bed.
Appreciate you hanging in there. Well, go home first.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you've got a little bit of a drive there, so.
Okay. Jumping into regular business, we have an abatement, several credits, and an exemption. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve an abatement for MAP 69, Lot 19, Unit 2, in the amount of $399.02 for the tax year 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
I move to approve a veteran's credit, 2 veterans credits for MAP 32, Lot 28, in the amount of $500, and a second for $2,000 for the tax years 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And Mr. Chair, I'm going to put this all in one motion unless anyone objects. I move to approve veterans credit for MAP 68, Lot 145, MAP 95, Lot 64, Unit 23, MAP 55, Lot 26, all in the amount of $500 for the tax year 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
And last, I move to approve a solar exemption for MAP 95, Lot 15, in the amount of $12,500 for the tax year 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We have Mr. Stevens, our Finance Director, here this evening for 2 approvals.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Which one are you doing first?
Snow and ice. Okay. A couple of administrative housekeeping items from last year. First being a request to access funds from our snow and ice deficit fund to cover operational deficits from 2023 in the amount of $64,655,000. For context, last year or 2022, we requested and took $87,000, so not far off of 2 years ago. Most of the makeup of the excess was our plowing and our salt budget again, and a little bit of maintenance and repairs to our equipment.
Any questions for Mr. Stevens? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to authorize a withdrawal from the town's snow and ice deficit fund in the amount of $64,655 to cover spending in excess of budget during FY 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you. Second request is to use water and sewer impact fees, the bank account balances, to cover debt service in 2024. Something we started doing 2 years ago when I came on, taking the income from 2 years back and applying it towards debt service in the current year. And the reason we go 2 years back is because that's the last year that was audited, so we know the numbers are all as they should be. Asking for a total of $100,971, broken down. Water impact fee account would be $37,532, and from the sewer impact fee account would be $63,439.
Okay. Any questions or discussion from Mr. Stevens? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to transfer $37,532 from the water impact fees and $63,439 from the sewer impact fees, respectively, to the general fund to offset debt payments on water sewer capital projects.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks for hanging in there with us. Mr. Dean.
Okay, first thing on the list is deliberative session, which we know we just had on February 3rd. And the question I have for the board is, are you in the mood or would you like to make any changes to your recommendations for the police fire substation article since it was amended?
Yeah. Oh, that's.
Well, we need to formally take that up, right?
Yeah.
If we can do it under my report, or you can do it under your chair's report.
Why don't we just do it now?
Yeah.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
Do you have the revised?
It is to add the words net zero in front of design,
That's right.
engineering, and construction.
Then I would entertain a motion to, is there any discussion first of all? Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend Article 4 as amended at deliberative session to the voters.
So moved.
Motion and a second.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had the opportunity to go visit Connie Road. I know we had a resident in from Connie Road a few meetings ago. I did do that with the Public Works Director and the Highway Superintendent. We have some ideas for the road, so hopefully those will bear fruit. We're going to work on that. I attended and was part of the Seabrook drill on February 7th. And I've been working at the Executive Director Hiring Committee with Health Trust. Been working on replacing the Executive Director position. I did attend for a brief time the Housing Advisory Committee on February 9th. And that was a good meeting, good discussion we had at that meeting. I've held 2 weekly operations reports on February 2nd and February 9th and plan on holding a third one February 16th. I did attend the Trustees of Trust Funds meeting today, and we talked about the Swayze funds. Been wrapping up employee reviews for the year, so I'm working on that. And then the siphons report I have is the pilot hole was successfully drilled, which was good news. And the reaming process is beginning from Swayze to the mills.
Great.
So.
That's great.
Fingers crossed.
And then
I don't want to jump up and down, but I want to.
Yeah.
I won't. How's that? But yeah.
So that's what I had for tonight. Just a brief, I will say too, briefly, we are expecting a little bit of flooding tomorrow with the high tide at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Public Works is getting the word out about that, and we're expecting the latest prognostications are 3 to 5 inches of snow tomorrow.
And my understanding is that school is canceled.
That's
really?
correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is correct.
But the trash is still.
Trash pickup is still in play.
It is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dean.
You're welcome.
Select Board Committee reports, Selectwoman Belanger.
I attended the Communications Advisory Committee meeting on February 1st from Ollie. And I always enjoy that, so I'm sorry you were sick, but it was a good opportunity for me. One of the questions I was asked while I was there were if there were any complaints during the primary regarding the ballot iPads. I did ask Andy, our town clerk, and she said, no, actually the opposite. So I did tell them I'd ask anyone here if they had any complaints. Okay, great. So Molly, when you go to your next communication, if you remember, because you don't have one next month.
I will update that.
And their newsletter, the newsletter that was started in the fall of 2023, Bob Glowacki said he currently has 500 to 600 on his mailing list with an 80 to 100% open rate, which is pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That is giant.
Yeah, it's huge. You're right. Agree. DPW has an 800 member mailing list with only a 67% open rate, but Bob is going to look into the analytics on that and see if...
It's still giant.
It's still good, but, of course, we were comparing it to his numbers, and it was lower. So, and our current application has the capacity for 15,000 people on the mailing list, so people sign up. And then Bob did a tutorial on how to sign up for the newsletters and the bi-weekly reports. So I was thinking maybe at some point, if we ever, maybe put him on our agenda. If he's
Absolutely.
going to be here anyway, maybe to do a quick, it took all of 3 minutes and it was really good. So he's also, Bob Gluacki is also beginning an analysis of Channel 6, formerly 98 operating procedures, because that was on their future to-do list. And the chair, Martha, wanted me to ask the select board for thoughts. They're meeting every other month instead of monthly, and also that their next meeting they're going to skip March, and their next meeting will be April 4th.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, I told them I didn't think there was a problem if they didn't have, if they didn't need to meet, then other
They can make that
committees do
decision,
that, so, okay. Okay, there's that one.
Thanks, Corey.
Planning board was February 8th. We only had one application that night. It was for 81 Front Street for a multi-family site plan review. There were a number of questions about parking spaces and Seminary Lane. Ultimately, we decided to table that, excuse me, to February 22nd while our planner talks to our town council over the Seminary Lane, and it's private, and there was some questions, so we wanted to get that straightened out. Dave Sharples also gave us a master plan update, which was wonderful. There were a total of 67 specific action items in the master plan. 66 of them are either completed, 23 of them, or being worked on, 43 of them. Only one has not begun, and that was to conduct a complete streets policy, which is in the CIP for funding for 2025. One of the other things that the planning board talked about was the master plan update. It's currently in the CIP for 2028, and Dave Sharples was looking for a discussion for possibly moving that earlier. And I will tell you, after reading this report, it really came home to me, because one of the questions was, does Exeter want to grow? So I think that's something we might want to seriously consider. It was done in 2018, so we're going on 7 years. So, and then Exeter Advisory Committee, because our town planner is taking this and going with it, we had a little bit of a conflict for who could attend, but we've got that all worked out, thankfully. So same time, same place.
That's the housing committee?
Yes. And we talked about the tax exemption and about the new committee, so everyone's on the same page on that. Mr. Sharples went through our town planner, went through the planning board deliberations on the 2 proposed ordinances for the ADU and conversions and the mixed-use neighborhood development, the MUND, which is going to be on the warrant article ballot for March 12th. And then Nick Taylor, Workforce Housing Coalition Director, and Julie Gilman, our select board and state rep, did a great back and forth on updates on legislative and thoughts, and so that was really good. So, and we did our goals. We set our goals for 2024, and we're going to look at we're going to consider current New Hampshire legislation and what we can support that would, obviously we're an Exeter Advisory Committee, but also how it would affect regionally and statewide, and that will in turn help Exeter. So we're all really excited about that. There's a potential expansion for units with Exeter Housing Advisory, Exeter Housing Authority, which we were all really excited about. And then we talked about the potential of future potential at the Crossroads property for redevelopment, possibly for affordable housing, and then zoning changes to consider for 2025. Excuse me, I can't breathe tonight. Zoning changes for 2025, and then our next meeting is in March.
Great.
And that is it for my report.
Thank you. Mr. Dean, that's quite an accomplishment on the master plan, and maybe for folks that don't watch planning board meetings in the near future, one of our next meetings, maybe have Mr. Sharples come and give the board an update?
Yes, that is the plan.
I think that's worth celebrating.
Very good.
Selectwoman Gilman. Thank you, Selectwoman Gilman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Why don't you skip me?
Okay.
Because I have more state rep stuff than committee stuff.
Selectwoman McCowan.
I don't have anything, but thank you for covering for me during deliberative session. I was very sick, but feel better, so thank you.
Glad you feel better. Selectwoman Chartrand.
Other than my attendance at deliberative session, I had no meetings.
The only meeting I had was this morning with Mr. Dean, the trustee of the trust funds, along with the Swayze Park trustees, had a dual meeting, which was nice to sit and listen to that. I would like to thank the town moderator and the supervisors of the checklist for their efforts during deliberative session, and I want to thank folks that showed up in person for deliberative session. Always great to have that attended. And I believe that is it. Selectwoman Gilman.
Yes, I attended the Housing Advisory Committee meeting, and it was actually, as Selectwoman Belanger discussed, there was a lot of good ideas coming out of the legislation that's currently here, the interpretation of it, and then setting a goal for what we want to see next year, so that I'm not surprised in September. So actually it was a really good conversation, because a couple of the bills that we're talking about I'm going to be seeing tomorrow in my committee. I just wanted to relate on one that I had talked about, about municipal bonds and changing it from a supermajority to a simple majority for bond issues. Failed. So failed out of my committee. So it's still the 2/3 or 3/5, whichever is greater. And the stabilizing rent increases was also found inexpedient to legislate, but that'll come back. And this week, excuse me while I scroll. We have nothing. Sorry,
That's okay.
It's a huge. No. Okay, it's today. All right. Election law has lots of things. Let's see this. So tomorrow, it's. Relative to asset limits for elderly property tax exemptions, that committee that we want to have. Here's why. There's a couple bills about the authority of planning boards, which will be very interesting. Lease agreements. Policies that municipalities are preempted from enacting. And I don't remember the wording for that one, or what it's supposed to do, but I'm on it. That's it.
Great, thank you. Correspondence, very quickly. There's a email correspondence between Greg Bisson and an individual looking to volunteer to do some work at the current Parks and Rec office, second floor.
Yes. Any questions on that? Any concerns by the board?
I didn't have any concerns.
Okay.
No, the only concern I had was about liability, but with the insurance, that's, yeah. Okay, then, no, I don't have any concerns.
Great, thank you.
New Hampshire reevaluation update from MRI, frequently asked questions and contact information.
Can I just, I'm sorry, I know it's getting late, but I did have a few people reach out to me about that. So apparently these questionnaires went out, and there's nothing on our website yet about it, so there were people asking questions. And I don't know, at least one of them was upset. They thought that they had to figure out the questionnaire, and that was gonna be how their taxes were.
Questionnaire?
Right, instead of, so I just want to make sure we've got something on the website.
Okay.
And
I know there was something, and I don't know if it got
I don't
bumped
know.
to the right.
Right,
just
it might
because
have.
of deliberative session and
so.
ceasefire project.
Yeah,
But
please.
yeah, we'll follow up on that.
All right, thank you. Correspondence from the chair of the Swayze Park trustee to the chair of the trustees of the trust fund with refund and disbursement information, and then the NHMA legislative bulletin. Reviewing the board calendar, our next meeting is February 26th, and then the next week, March 4th, followed by March 18th. Again, we spoke of this earlier in the meeting. February 27th will be the pickpocket feasibility study presentation at the town hall, right now set for 7 p.m.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is that a river study committee meeting, or is that a general public meeting?
It's, the River Advisory Committee will be there, but it's a general public meeting.
Got it. So it's their meeting, but it's open to the public.
Correct.
Got it.
Thank you, that was a good question. And then March 12th will be our election, town election.
Yes.
Any other business? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We stand adjourned. Good night, thank you, everybody. Travel safe.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv. Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.